Hello, good evening and welcome. I do believe we are live. Well, that's what YouTube says, but it's been a bit awkward of late, so you never know. I'm going to head over into the chat so I can say hello to everybody. Johnny wins the gold star, doesn't he? Hello, good evening. Oh, I can hear myself in stereo.
Can't hear you. Oh, yes.
I can hear myself, so I can assure you everything is totally fine. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everybody. Right, who's there? Where are we? Hello, Peter. Got your email. Won't have time for that bit tonight, but I've read everything. I will get back to you. We will work through the file. And I've already had 4 other people who want to look at compiling. So apparently compiling in Scrivener, the thing. It did change between versions 2 and 3, and it was already complicated. So I'm not surprised that people want to cover that. So we definitely will. We've got time this week, haven't we? She said, hopefully. Can't spill the beans on what we did last weekend, though, yet. Mike's looking very confused. He can't remember. Hello, John. Hello, Graham. Good evening, everybody. Right, is my screen working is what we need to know next. So let's get that shared and find out. Whee! You should be seeing a blue screen. Hopefully you are.
Blue screen of death.
No, not a blue screen of death. But it will magically flick over to after hours. Excellent. Oh, what's this about? A storm. What's going on? What's going on? Have I missed something? Don't like that. Hello, Jane. Good to see you. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Right,
Hi,
well,
Jane.
I suppose I should tell everybody what I've got planned. We're kind of in demob mode, aren't we, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Can I just do something for Jane?
Go on.
Mac love bites.
There are after hours people who have no idea what you're talking about.
Jane's not been in for ages.
No, she's not. No, she's not. I thought you were going to do a shower with Jane.
No.
They definitely won't understand. There's a blast from the past, Jane. I should do a ooh. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll do an ooh as we get up what we're doing tonight. Ooh. Right, the plan is, last week we unboxed the Linksys Velops. For the uninitiated, a Velop, the Linksys Velop, is the system that we've put in place to replace the Airport Extremes and Airport Expresses that we've installed. Now, we've done it in stages. Good evening, Carl. Initially, I got them on an Amazon offer, and it was really because, although I am the qualified systems engineer 15 times over, I've got all of the Microsoft exams. You can't. It's like the gardener with a terrible garden. I don't want to waste my time with it. So because everything was working swimmingly with the Apple system, I left it alone. It was fine. Then, of course, they stopped supporting them. That was still okay. You know, if your equipment's working, just leave it be. But unfortunately, I started to notice dropouts, and that's why we switched. I was looking at 2, but we went with the Velop. It came on offer at Amazon, and I said I'm going to go with that. They promised that 3 would be enough for a 5-bedroomed house. So technically, 3 should have been fine. But as I explained, we have slate in the walls here, so it's not fine. And this slate placement's random. I'll take pictures one day. You don't find out about it until you're drilling a hole to put a cupboard up and the drill bit comes out worn to nothing. So we unboxed 3 more last week and I installed them. So what I've done is I will talk you through the installation process, just in case you are in the market after Apple's sad network demise. Then I'm looking at a little application. It's only $5 called ColorRay, which is to do with colorizing images, which again, we've done. But this basically does it for you. Now, there is soon to be a continuing saga with PDF Expert Pro, which if you've listened to the latest MacBites, I can happily say it was this week, is still rumbling on and promises to continue rumbling on for some considerable time. But let it be known, I can actually show you the Pro features today. And that's what I'll be doing. Then, following last week, on top of Good evening, Deb. On top of the Notion thing and the Scrivener thing that people won't compile, we got... How many people do we get saying more Notion, more Notion, more Notion? The issue with Notion seems to be, you know it can do more than you're doing with it. So the thing you need to understand is linking databases. So that's what I'll show you. Completely from scratch. I will show you the MacBites one, because you like that as well, apparently. It's huge. But I will build it again from scratch for another show and let you see it. Then we have our freebies. Then we're going into part 6 of the Comic Creation Kit. Unboxing, I will be honest with you, it's not terribly thrilling. In fact, it arrived in a bit of a state, didn't it? As you dragged it up the stairs.
Yeah.
Yes. He managed to squeeze it through the letterbox, despite the 4-foot-high sign saying, please open the porch door and put it inside. So, but I'm confident it'll be all right. Now, as ever, we start with the week at MacBites headquarters. Been a busy week. Started Saturday. Mike's wondering now what on earth we did on Saturday.
I know what we did on Saturday.
Well, you went shopping on Saturday, but, not very exciting. But Saturday night went out, new restaurant. I think that's worth an ooh. Ooh. It's the D-Tie. It's in Hale Village, so Johnny I will know it. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. Food was absolutely fantastic. Mike had the duck. I had some kind of weirdy chicken. What was the chicken called?
Honey chicken.
Honey chicken. It was very nice. And I did manage a little piece of duck as well. And I did share my chicken with all concerned as well. But then it was on to Sunday. Now, Sunday didn't start badly. We are always up early on a Sunday. Hello, Melinda. I hope we're all lovely too. Sunday we're always up early. So we haired off out. And then I decided we'd go and have lunch. That bit was fine. It was when we got back and we realised the garden needed some TLC. Those bushes should not be that high. Did I also note, Mike, I asked you for some after pictures and didn't get any? Would have taken my own, but I was in no fit state, as they're about to find out. We haven't cut those since last summer. They were a smidgen on the overgrown side. But you'll be glad to know, how on earth did we get our MacBites out as well? We managed to fill the green bin. If you are not of this country, you may wonder why we have 19 bins in all the colours, in all the sizes. That's because they are, what can you say, anal about recycling. So, Mike had already done some of the grass and put it in the green bin. We then filled the green bin with the rest of it, and if you look behind the green bin, there's another green bin's worth. So, Sunday, I was mortally wounded in this. That's my left arm. And that's the back of it. So this is why we don't garden. So I managed to get over that and we went into Monday. I know we're a week on by this stage, but we were still in happy birthday mode for Mike. And he got his cake. You'll notice there's all separate cakes there. That's because the one on the right with the little candle on it, that's gluten-free. I had a mouthful of cake. Was rather pleased. So that was the end of his birthday formalities. But we got a MacBites out. This is not... It's not a common occurrence, is it? But we did. How many of you have heard it? Because we kind of have two audiences here. There's the original MacBites people who listen to MacBites, and then there's the After Hours people with a lovely intersection. So who's heard Predictive Analytics with Mrs. Brown's Bunions? We have very interesting show titles as well.
I wonder how many After Hours people have heard of MacBites.
Some will have no idea that we do a crazy podcast. And when I say we, I mean the series.
Can we take a straw poll?
Let's take a straw poll. Let us know if you've heard this episode of MacBites. Now, while I was busy publishing that, Mike, things could have gone better. He was watching the match. And unfortunately, and I knew it was going to happen when the commentator started and said, if United score first, there's a 98.7% chance they'll win the match. I knew that was putting the mockers on it, and it did. Oh, Peter's not heard it. Is it a podcast or a webcast? It's a podcast. It's available on demand. Jane, I'm going to let you describe what it is. Graham, I know you've listened. I know Carl's heard it. I will let you explain what MacBites is like. Sort of insanity. Now, Tuesday, I was recovering and I'd had an idea. I was still bruised, battered and bleeding from the garden. But I decided I would reinstall my Contour Shuttle Pro. It's a blast from the past for me. I'd used it for many years, as you can see. In fact, as I was looking at the little labels, I know, bless, paper labels. Wouldn't you think they'd have moved on in the last 10 years? But no, that's still the latest model. It said Catch Playhead on one of those buttons, and I thought, wow, that's like 5 apps back for me audio editing. I'd had to pension off that device. It is for video editing mainly, but it can be used for any application. So if you wanted to use it, say you've got accessibility requirements and you want to use it for surfing the web, you can do. So the button on the left and right could navigate you backwards and forwards through your history or something like that. You can use it for any application. But I pensioned it off because it clashed with my Matthias Pro keyboard. But my Matthias Pro keyboard's been replaced with an Apple wireless keyboard with numeric keypad. So I thought, it's time to dig it out. And you know what you're like when you've dug it out? Well, you knew where it was. I couldn't find it. Took me 3 days to find it. But I found it. Then I had fun and games getting it to work with Hindenburg, but it's now sorted. I didn't have it in time for editing that episode of MacBites, but I did edit another episode of a different podcast that I do called Walker's Warblings, and it was much faster. So do you know what? Might tempt me back into the studio sooner rather than later. So that's on my desk now.
Melinda wants to know if MacBites is food porn.
We mentioned food once or twice, but no, it's Mac-related news with a very different slant on it, is what I would say. There you go, a little bit of everything, tech-related with humour. I'm liking that. Oh, Kim's made the flapjacks. How did they go down? Excellent. Wednesday was a momentous day. If you are an Affinity user, you will understand my excitement at that. You might not know what that is. I will explain. I moved my last client, who was clinging manfully to Microsoft Publisher, over to Affinity Publisher. I am Microsoft Publisher free. I am a happy bunny. Happy, happy, happy bunny. So, they've moved. I was training. I've created templates, and we're on the way. Oh, couldn't be happier. Thursday, well, we're about to see what went on Thursday. But let's just say I set up about setting these beasts up, which is the Linksys Velop. As you can see, it's sat quite neatly on my desk, you know where the other one is. And you use your phone to set it up. So I'm about to show you that, which is setting it up. So for those who missed last week's, I had 3 Linksys Velops. That's what they look like. These are said Velops. They are shipped. You can get them with one individual if you want them. But at $249 for 3, they're actually cheaper than the Apple Airport Expresses. Now, one of the reasons I said it was a bit iffy, my network, it was dropping connection, and I felt it wasn't fast enough. The speed wasn't good to me. Now, if I tell you what the speed was, all right, some of you will say that's ridiculous. Of course, that's fine. I was getting a speed of about 20 meg on my wireless devices, which I appreciate. Some of you have Wi-Fi internet speed. Now, I'm talking not internal, I'm talking out to the internet. Some of you are thinking, I only get 8 to start with, 20 would be fine. It would, but our network speed is 375. So something wasn't right somewhere. So I decided, that's it, I'm done, let's rip them out. Now, I haven't actually ripped them out yet. They're there as a backup. But I bought 3 of them, set them up, tried them, got it all working. Internet speed, 374. So the Apple ones, there was definitely something not right. I've lost 1 meg, from the outside to the inside. There was something wrong with the Apple ones. So I decided the only problem I was having with them was the 3 that I've got are in the hall, which is where the internet box is. So the router that goes out to our internet provider is in the hall, and one of those is right next to it. The next one is on the landing, which is virtually above it. And the other one, as you saw last week, is behind my monitor in my office. All of that is on the front side of the house. I can quite happily get my own internet sat in the neighbour's front garden across the road. Our conservatory, not the best. So the extra 3 were to spread out the love internally. This is a video, which hopefully it will play, of how you actually set this up. Oh, now come on, go away. I don't want that thing there at the bottom. But basically what you do is you go into it on your phone. Now, part of the setup has already been done because I've already got devices, as you can see. 10 of them attached to this network. So I go into it. Those are the ones I've got. So hall, landing, office. I thought I added an extra one in there, but I didn't. You've got to go back for that. So I go back and it's at the bottom, setting up a new product. You are going to, you have an option. You can either set up a new network, which obviously I don't want to extend the network that I've got. I want to add one to my existing network. Don't want a separate network, want to add it to this one. So it starts loading this up. Now, take a note at this point, when we started, 20 to 1 in the morning, as you do. Wish I could get rid of that play thing, Mike. I don't think that should be there, but never mind. I'd plugged it in first. I'd then gone to my phone. You work through this system. I've speeded this up. You'll notice that at the top considerably because it takes quite a while. It says it can take 3 minutes. It took exactly 3 minutes. I'm just speeding it up here, as you can see from the speed of that. And it's going 40, 41, 42. It does take the 3 minutes to wake the node up, and the light goes from blue to purple. At this stage, and I've left this bit in, I could have cut it out, but I decided to leave it in. It says it's found a node, and it blinks the light purple to let you know it's found the node. So if you've ever set up an Airport Express or an Airport Extreme, it's very manual. This isn't. It's very automatic. You'll see that I've speeded that up as well, 45, 46 at the top. It did take 6 minutes. But then it came up with this message saying that the node has a signal, but it's not a great signal. At this stage, it was about 3 foot from the other node, which was ridiculous. So I thought, you see it says at the bottom, try again. You get an option to try again, or you can move it. So I thought, well, I'll try again. Then it said it might work, and you get an option to either leave it where it is or try again. So I thought I'm going to move it nearer. And I will try again. So I will make it go through this process again. My logic was, once I get it connected and it says it's in a good spot, I'll just move it. It'll be fine. I know it will. But it is a little, it's not tricky. It's just annoying that you basically have to sit cross-legged with 2 of them touching to get the thing set up. But, and as you can see, we're now up to 52 minutes. So we're 12 minutes in. It liked it. And I've just shown Mike where they were sat and he went, I'm not surprised it liked it. They really were virtually touching. So once it's happy with it, you then give it a name. You'll notice there that Office has got Office 2 on it. Interesting point to note that. I already have one called Office. So it knew that if I wanted to call it Office, I was going to have to put a 2 after it. But this one was for the bedroom. Who doesn't need fabby internet in the bedroom? So it's saving that name to the node, and then we had success. So the original 3 nodes are at the bottom, and the new node is at the top. Then you get to say, do you want to set up another one? And I did, because obviously I had a box full of 3 of them, as you saw last week. So I did exactly that same process again and set one up for the studio, which is next door to me. The studio is smallish, but it's got a lot of equipment in it, and it's very insulated. So I'm going through the process now for the 3rd time. So it's waking up the next node. This one, I think, we've done the studio. Yeah, we've done the bedroom, the studio. This one's the conservatory. So I'm going through the same process again. It's still sat on the desk. And now it's given me hall, landing, conservatory, and 3 others. So I've got 6. At that point, so this time it's 29 minutes past 1. Now it wants to do a system update. And I'm thinking, why did I start this? But as you can see, it didn't take that long. A couple of minutes that said the Wi-Fi was ready. All the devices were connected to it, and then I could go to it and we were good to go. So it's now logging me in. This is still the app on the phone. That's how you set it up. And when it gets in there, what I'm hoping to see is that I've got 6 devices and they are all purring away. Right, in answer to that question from Neil, do you have any Ethernet cable around the house? Oh, yes. We have lots of Ethernet cable. We have 2 Ethernet backbones running the entire house. The only devices that are on the Wi-Fi are devices that need to be on the Wi-Fi. So on the screen now, there's the Velop stuff. There's the 6 that I have. So I've got my new 3. They're alphabetical, I think. No, they're not. So hall, landing, office are the originals. Bedroom, conservatory, studio, the new ones. So that took me, as you can see, an hour 34. Oh, yes, that took me over an hour, about an hour and a half. But I condensed it to 5 minutes. And it's not a difficult setup. You don't need to tell it anything. You'll notice there was no... what's the router, what's the subnet mask, where's the internet gateway? There was none of that. All of that was coming from the one in the hall. It's already been set up. So you can just add these things to it. The one for the studio is in the studio. The others, on my desk. Technically labelled, one for the bedroom, one for the conservatory. Oh, Colonel Mustard in the conservatory with the lead piping. Yes, I will sort that out this weekend.
They'll get put in their rightful place.
They will. I did put the post-it notes on so I knew which was which because I didn't fancy renaming them. But actually, I thought to myself, it's probably worth putting proper labels on. And I do have a proper label maker. Pro tip, if you are in the UK, Aldi, it's label weekend. You can get a label maker that's £38 on Amazon for £14.99 and labels that are £8 a roll for £3.69. So I've already raided our local Aldi and I've already got a spare one. So I'll put a label on it and I'll put the label inside at the bottom. So there you go. That was setting them up. Happy to report internet speed reported last night at 374 with an upload of 21. Which I'd much rather was much faster, but is about as fast as it's going to get. So we're all up to speed now. Right, can you set your own DNS server on them? Yes, you can. You can do... now, how I've done it, Graham, this is the internal wireless network. And it takes care of the wireless network, which is pretty important. I do have my internet service provider provide me with a router, and that router also has wireless. So I could have 2 wireless networks running side by side. The reason I don't rely on my internet service provider's router for the Wi-Fi is then I'd have to use bridges to extend the wireless network to get it around the house. And the other issue is, if they ever come and change the box, I've got to reconfigure the entire network. Now, this did actually happen. Were we on 200? What was our speed before we got the update? Was it 200? 150?
200.
I think it was 200. We had a 200 meg download speed on our Wi-Fi and we moved to a business plan, which is supposed to be 350, but we get 375. That was a long story. But when they came to fit it, they have to give you a new router. So the guy said to me, oh, nothing will work until we've set it up. And I looked at him and said, pardon. So he said, well, I'm going to have to take this box out. So I said, that's fine. Your wireless will carry on. And he went, no, love, it won't. Sorry, dear. And I'm like, Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, I do know what I'm doing. The wireless network will carry on. So I said, it will be fine. And he said, well, I can't hang around until it's all configured. Your job's worth. I said, you won't have to. And what I've done is, one of those Velops downstairs is plugged in with a cable. So when he took the router out, yes, it lost connectivity to the internet, but the computers internally did not lose connectivity because the wireless carried on. And the wireless, there is a cable in it, and that carried on upstairs. So it kept it going. So when he put in the new router, I plugged in one cable, and boom, everything just carried on as normal. And he left scratching his head with, I don't know how she's done that. But it's really simple because you're putting in a router that's got the same IP address as the one that was taken out. So all of the internal networking takes place on those Velops. Everything external takes place on the other one. Right, have we got any more other questions in there? What have we got in here? Ooh, we're all talking about you.
I'm talking about tech and food with Melinda.
Yes, the other bit of Peter's thing that I thought was very good is that he's considering an iBook. Do you know iBooks is 8 years old in January? That's scary, isn't it? I think it's about time we revisited iBooks because there has been some movement with it. The other thing with iBooks is I think long term it'll be replaced with Pages. Don't know if we're quite there yet, but the two are converging, shall we say. So that's on my list as well. Also, the podcasting. That was partly the reason that I reinstalled my Shuttle Pro. So I have got a podcast that's this week's was about 11 minutes, 12 minutes. It's fairly short. It's not a MacBites. MacBites editing quite complicated. The series get involved. But this other show that I do for the Brooklands 196 network is only about 10 to 12 minutes. So I will show you a soup to nuts edit on that in Hindenburg. That's coming up too. Right, what else have we got going on here? I just got to that one. Oh, I like Creative Geeks. Creative Geeks, perfect. Mike's quite right. You're in the right place. Oh, a school principal. Oh, I'm a school governor. I oversee the IT side of things, surprisingly enough. Yes, right, so we're up to date. Okay, so next thing to have a look at, this little application called ColorRay. It was something that was promoted this week, so I thought I'll have a look at that. It's a little bit like the one we looked at last time, which did one job and it did it well. Pretty similar. It does one job and it does it well. That's the App Store page. But to put it through its paces, I did that with it. And it took seconds. Now, I personally don't think it's perfect, but it was easy. So I thought we'd have a look at this and what it can do. So let's toddle off and find it. ColorRay. Got lots of apps called Colour, haven't I? And I am going to need a Finder window. Just wondering where the app was then. Other screen, as ever. Right, let's take that full screen. I thought that looked like an iPad app. The sliders, the whole thing looks like an iOS app. Right, let me get my files. I've got 3 files that I could use. Just to add a little bit of jeopardy to this, guess what I didn't do? Didn't have time to go through them all. So I've done the Apple one, but I haven't done the others. So I have an Apple one. I have this Apple one. It's not the same Apple one. Oh, no, we don't want to do that. So that's the original file. And you then get to bleed the colour out of it for a start. So if you make the background mono, you can do bits and pieces with it in terms of changing it so it's darker, lighter, etc. Putting a blur on it. I'll put a blur on it. There we go. And then I'm going to want to paint on it. So go and get a brush. You get to say what size. And that's the brush just hovering over the middle there. If you put it over dark a bit, you can see it. And all you literally have to do is bring it back. Draw on it where you want to bring back, in this case, the focus and the colour. Now, it would be much faster if I did a much bigger brush. Oh dear, where did that go? That definitely shouldn't have happened. All I did was make the brush bigger. What are you doing over there? Can I undo? Undo didn't seem to be doing any good. Okay, be like that then. I will close it and start again. You're not even closing on me. Oh, I am having one of those days with you, aren't I? Do you want to? Yes, I should have said yes, shouldn't I? Hoisted by my own petard there. Right, not seen it do that one before. Well, nothing like a live demo, is there? Right, let's bring the apple back. I'll work with it as it is, never mind. So in here, I'm making that black and white. I could add different colour effects if I wanted. So you've got all these things in here. So basically get the background as you want the background. Yeah, probably not that. That's actually quite effective. The blur is optional, and you get to decide how much blur. So you can take the intensity down, or you can take it up. There you go. You'll probably get a better edge on it with it less blurred rather than more blurred. You've also got the option, irrespective of what you choose there, to make it look like an oil painting, which is definitely not going to work well. And there is a sketch effect, which again, not going to work well, unless that's the effect that you actually want. You can change the intensity of it and the edges of it, which might make it a little bit better. On the other hand, it might make it worse. So if you wanted an overall look like that, then you're minted. But we don't. We just want that, and we want a coloured apple. Right, so let's go back to the brush. I'm a bit concerned now about the brush, but I'll make it bigger. Make it a little bit bigger. Don't do anything weird on me. There we go. So all I am literally doing is holding down the left mouse button and drawing over it. It is as simple as that, and it brings it back in. Now, there's nothing that this is doing that Affinity Photo can't do. But when you're in a rush, it's going to be faster than Affinity because you are not having to go in and make the extra layers and change the properties of the layers and all of that. And as I said to Mike, while I could do it in Affinity Photo, don't think Mike could do it in Affinity Photo. So can't really get much faster than that, can you? Now, as I said, that's got a blur on the background. And I think that makes the edges look unreal. So possibly it would look more realistic without the blur on it. But you get the idea. From there, you can save the profile, etc. You can also save the file. So give it an output. You can choose the outputs. There's lots of outputs that you've got. I'll just do it as a JPEG. And save it. We will stick that, even in the right place. So we'll save it in there as an edited file as well. No, I don't want to fiddle. Right, let's have a look at a couple of the other ones. That one's going to take a while. Let's just try that one, which is the poppy one. Whoa, that's way big, isn't it? Let's make that smaller. Somewhere in there's a red poppy. Unless it's already done all of that to the background. Let's take the blur off. Let's take that off. There we go. So that's the image I've loaded in. Lots of colour in it. But if you just want that red poppy to pop, this is going to be interesting, isn't it? I probably need a smaller brush because last time it went weirdy with the brush. But literally just bring it back in. Smaller brush for the edges, I would say, and you might need to zoom in and out of that. Now I'm using a mouse. You've got lots of different options like duet display and soon to be sidecar to use your pen, your Apple Pencil. You may have a Wacom tablet, which I do. It's in the studio under the desk. That's how much use it gets. I think I've just been doing it that long that I'm not bad with a mouse. I'm comfortable with a mouse. I am not a trackpad girl. I like mice on laptops as well. So it's not going to be perfect because I'm not zooming in and I'm not changing the size of the brush. But that is good enough. Good enough for a demo. I can see the chat moving and I can't read it because if I look away, it's going to be terrible. Now, I've started around the edges and then started colouring it in. It doesn't matter which way you go. I find that easier. But that's just me, and your mileage may vary. So I'll try and get these last bits. Some bits are easier than others, depending on which way you're going with the mouse. The mouse is set to be quite hard. So it's not got a fuzzy edge on it. Some images would benefit from that. This one's going to benefit from not having a fuzzy edge on it. And it's going to be easier for me to draw on it. Now, I would definitely need a smaller brush to get into that corner. But I am not risking at this stage that it goes mad and moves the flower that I have actually got. So really just showing you the principle, very quick demo of something that if you have the need for it, but not the skill, don't feel that you need to use Affinity or Photoshop or anything else. I think I wrote a blog post on this. What I was saying was I heard from this person, this was a good couple of years back, they wanted to use, and I think it was Sony Vegas something, it was an audio editor, or they were using a video editor as an audio editor. But it was a hugely expensive piece of kit, and they were complaining it didn't do something, or the way that it did it was very complicated. And I said, but that's easy, you know, with ScreenFlow or Camtasia, or even a free audio editing app like Audacity. Why are you using them? I've bought and paid for that and I'm using it. It's a professional app. And I said, yes, but it doesn't have the feature that you want. It's a professional app and it's the one I'm using. Just use the app that gets the job done. Doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to tell anybody what it is. I mean, I've done stuff in Affinity Publisher when the day it came out in beta, and off it went for print and no one could tell the difference. Doesn't matter. Whatever you are best with. Right, let's have a look here. Did you just say you can use Duet as a drawing pad? I do believe you can. I'm trying to remember how now. Or did I mean the other one? Oh, what's that other one, Mike? The physical one. AstroPad. Could have been AstroPad. But give Duet a try. I've got it installed, I think. Let me have a look. I think I have. I'll have a look for you, Mike. Make a note of that. I thought you could. Because if you can see your Mac desktop on your iPad, which I thought was the essence of that, you could put a Mac app on your iPad, then you should be able to. You should be able to. You definitely will be able to with Sidecar. That's already in beta in 4 different apps that I'm on beta programs of. So everybody's adopting that pretty early on as well. And there's AstroPad, but AstroPad is physical and quite expensive, I do believe. Right, so that was ColorRay. Does one job, does it well. Simple as. So let's lose that. Let's go back into here. I've got 3 monitors, but I have been known to extend onto other ones. Mike's got... Why don't you put the link in for that thing you've got? Because that's pretty cool. Is it still working on the Mac?
What are we talking about? That
physical monitor of yours that you use at work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, get the link for that. That was only about £120, wasn't it? Apple had a moment and stopped supporting it. I need to put up something on the screen because it's black. Apple had a moment with the drivers, but it's fixed. So have a look at this link that Mike's going to put in. It's not expensive and it works brilliantly. It is a physical monitor. And I must admit, I did have a look for that. Yeah, the thing with iMacs is, we've said it before, every time there's a new iMac, they produce different ports on the back. And that determines what you can plug in. I remember waiting, I think, until 2011 before I could put 2 external monitors on it. I've used Duet. I think there was about 2 or 3 others before that, and I've used those as well. It really does just depend. You know, how effective it is depends on the app. Sometimes it can be quite slow and jerky, but as time's gone on, they've got better and better. And I'm presuming the Sidecar thing will work even better still, because there'll be support hardware-wise and software-wise for it at OS level. So it should work pretty well. Was it an Asus? I think it was. I think it was an Asus. Right, PDF Expert 7. If you have heard the show, the MacBites show, you'll know we were less than impressed with the subscription feature. So we covered this a couple of weeks back, and we were really happy, very happy. There was a new version of PDF Expert. The problem was it was subscription, and even worse than that, because I would have been prepared to pay a certain amount, but at £50 or $50 a year, we thought it was absolutely ludicrous. Now, it also got complicated. That table that you're looking at there, which you'll see again in a moment in its entirety, but it's complicated by the fact that if you've never ever used it before, you get those 5 features on the left. That's all you get. If you've used version 6, which needed paying for, you get a little bit more. And if you bought the in-app purchase in version 6, you get even more than that. So it's a little bit complicated. But the upshot is that unless you pay for the subscription, you are not going to get those features at the bottom, those 3. Now, I looked at those features and I thought they'd be nice to have. They would, but not a necessity. And then we went out for the day. We went out to Deepest Cheshire, if you recall. Jane won't have seen that last week. I should have put the slide in. We went twice. The first time we went to see Queen, a Queen tribute band. And the second week we went back to see an ABBA tribute band. If you were with us, you'll know the photos to which I refer. And Mike was in the queue. I was in the car. And I'd taken with me a physical notebook of mine. I'd also taken some stuff that I needed to scan and convert to PDF. So I'm sitting there, front passenger seat, thinking, I could do that now. I've got an iPad with me. So I did. I used an app called Scanner Pro. It was fine. Then I saw the file size. It was 4.5 meg, and it shouldn't have been more than 1.5. And I thought, that's the problem. When I scan on a physical scanner, great. But when I scan with my iPad, the files are too big, which was when I looked at that and thought, there's one of those pro features that would be useful. So at that point, I thought, yes, useful, but I am not paying $47.99 for a subscription to do it with. Right. Now, from that point, let me see these questions. Can you in-app purchase on 6 still before upgrading to 7? That's a very good question, because they're not separate apps. So if you have actually just gone to your iPad and done an update, you will already have got 7. We checked that out because I said to Mike, which account did you buy it on and when did you buy it, Mike? Did you buy the in-app purchase as well as the original purchase? And he went back to look live in iTunes at his past purchases, and it was something like September 2017, and it said you bought PDF Expert 7. And I said, you didn't, that was 6. But what they've actually done is replace 6 with 7. So if you still happen to have version 6 on an iPad and you've not updated it, there is a possibility you may be able to do that. But in relation to the fact I have not paid £48 or anything like it, but I can show you these pro features. There's a story. How do I have access to the Pro version to demonstrate the features to you when I have not paid for a subscription? So like I said, it's a long story and it's one that's actually still going on. We were hoping it would have drawn to a conclusion by close of business Friday so we could fill you in on what we did. But what we're going to have to say is all the gory details are going to be in the next MacBites, that's for sure. And when I can bring this to a conclusion, I will let you know the full position. But at the moment, we've got an open ticket with them and we don't know. I use PDF Expert on the desktop to shrink the size of the files. But obviously, in this scenario, I was in a field in Cheshire and I didn't have access to it. I could potentially have uploaded it to a cloud, logged in remotely, done it that way and pulled it down. But it just struck me that the first time I had a need for that was like 3 days after they'd released this version. So what we're looking at here is the features that you get. New users on the left, 6 users, second from the left, second from the right if you bought the in-app purchase. So it probably would be worth it. You'd get 4 extra features, wouldn't you? And then the Pro subscription. Now for the Pro subscription, you can jump, if you're a new user, from the one on the left to the one on the right. So it may well be worth new users going for a subscription if signing stamps, managing pages, merging documents is important to you. But as the point I made on MacBites, the point I made the last time we looked at this is, as a PDF Expert 6 user, with an in-app purchase, I would be paying £48 for just 3 features. And I think that price-wise is where they've gone wrong. So, Having got access to these pro features, don't ask, I intend to demonstrate those so you can actually see them, because the other problem is you only get 7 days trial. I thought they could extend that to a month. I mean, come on, guys. But you only get 7 days. So I thought it would be good if you could actually see those features, maybe make a decision whether that's actually worth your while doing it, depending on your use cases. So I'm not doing the camera thing with the iPad, because that went so well last time. What are you left with after you cancel a subscription after 1 year? That's an excellent question, Peter. Logic would say to me, because I can prove that I bought the in-app purchase for 6, I'd be taken down to the second from the right level. If you didn't, you'd be taken down to the left-hand level, where you'd only have the basic features. But as Neil says, betting there'll be special offers, that's the issue, because I honestly can't see many people going for this. Maybe professional people who handle PDFs day in, day out, maybe they would, but I still think it's a big ask. That people don't like in-app purchases. They don't like subscriptions. And that's a very hefty subscription for an iPad-only app. Right, so if I don't have the camera, we're hoping it won't crash as much, because it does have its moments, doesn't it? Right, the application in question is down here. Now, if you've used 6, you may look at that and think, whoa, blinding, because the other version used to look very different. You can get back to that if you want. So let's show that first of all, which is, where did that go? Sidebar? No, it wasn't sidebar. Where have you put stuff? I've been all through this and it was fine and dandy. There we go. Interface at the bottom. So the one on the left is the new one. That's the one they want you to use, just as Apple are supposed to be bringing in a dark interface. The classic interface was that one, which to me just looks a lot better. But on the basis that everybody else might want it the default way, we'll leave it set to that. So that's what it looks like by default. You have the ability, top left, to create a PDF. So we'll start off up there. Now this is Pro enabled. So to show you that, if I go into the settings, you've got restore purchases. That should actually already be restored. Oh, no, we don't do it. It's already restored. No, it didn't fail. I'm already there. Silly thing. But that's how you do it, right, through there, which gives you this opportunity when you're going to create multiple new files. You've got multiple ways to do it. So first of all, you can create a new PDF from scratch. So you don't need to create it in another app and take it into here. You can just have a new PDF file. You can also choose to combine files, which is the next one. And then you've got, it says Word to PDF, Spreadsheet to PDF, Slides to PDF. I don't know why it says Word to PDF, because when you read it, it says Doc files, docx, pages, and other documents. So I think it should say document to PDF. The other one doesn't say Excel to PDF and PowerPoint to PDF. And it does work when you read them. Numbers, I love the way it says other Excels. Can you see that, Mike? With a lowercase e. Lovely. Lovely. I mean, that is, I'm going to take a screenshot of that. That's actually really poor, because next to it on the slides one, it says other presentations.
Other PowerPoint.
Yes, it doesn't, does it? So I think that should say other spreadsheets. I don't think it should say Excel. I've never heard multiple Excel files called Excels before, which is very poor. Then you've got your web to PDF, where you can get any web page. You can convert images to PDFs, and then convert any other file to PDF. So you're pretty much covered in there with what you can do. Now, what I should be doing, isn't it? Graham's hit it right on the head there. I don't mind a few subscriptions, but you can't do it for all apps. That's my problem. If you'd have said to me, what subscriptions do you have? In terms of numbers, I would have guessed no more than 6 to 8. But I went into Notion and I built myself a subscription database. Frightened myself witless. No kidding. I still have my Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, which I'm thinking is about to bite the dust. But it's the things that you take on and you kind of forget. Seriously. There was Ulysses. There was Oh, there was all sorts in there. Hang on. I've got an iPad behind this iPad, which I can probably get in and have a look at. Where did I put my subscriptions? I think I mentioned it on MacBites. So you may, if you've listened to the MacBites, you might know more than me. Right, subscription tracker. Let me rattle them off for you. Drafts, Bear, Day One, Ulysses, Creative Cloud, Wirecast, Parallels, LinkedIn Learning, Envato Elements, iCloud, Google Drive, Dropbox is pending, Amazon S3, Notion, Evernote, Amazon Prime, Lead Pages, iThemes, let's get back to that, Aweber, come on, back to Aweber, Now TV, Spotify, 1Password, and Fly Plugins. It's terrifying. Those are services that we consider to be essential for what we do. But, you know, when you look at them like that, I've even totaled up at the bottom what that actually costs. And not everything is included, okay, because some of them still say zero. I'm just in the process of building this thing. So 1Password says zero. That's about £40 a year. But the ones I've put a price on, brace yourself, total £1,510 a year. That's why wasn't too keen on adding yet another subscription to it. That's why. Not that I'm tight, as everyone else is saying, not that I'm tight. It is ridiculous. It is totally ridiculous what it actually comes to. So, no more is happening. Yes, Amazon Prime. That's the thing, you forget, don't you? You forget which ones you've added. But, you know, when the cost is 50, I do have to think. But that's creating a new PDF. Now, if I start in the top left-hand corner and tap that, you can see it's not just a blank page. When I went into it, it looked like that. So white was selected and a blank page. But you can have lined, you can have a grid. But if you slide, you've also got other ones. So you've got music, you've got dots at 5mm, dots at 1mm, graph paper and isometric, if you are so inclined. So going back to lined looked pretty good. You can have it as white, you can have it as lemon, or you can have it as a blueprint, which would look fabulous for the isometric. But those are your options. So I'll set it to the lemon and then create PDF. And there is your PDF in the bit at the bottom next to the After Hours presentation and the PDF Expert Guide, from whence you can open it. Now, we're going to have a bit of a problem in a minute. You see at the bottom where it's saying screen mirroring, document, screenshot, blah, blah, blah. I'm minded not to touch that full stop or we'll lose the picture. But you can see what you've got there. And this is just an empty file. So I'm going to close these down. So we've just got that one empty file. In terms of showing you the editing, it would make more sense to open a file, which is what I'm going to do. But I'll just navigate backwards because there's some things in here I'm not pleased with. Things that they have changed that don't make me a happy person. You used to have in this view that you're looking at now, which is the, look at the left-hand side, My Files bit. You're all now rabbiting away through your subscriptions. It's not good, is it? What we'll do in a future show, I'll finish off my subscriptions database and I will show you how I built it. I'll make it available for you if you like. And then you too can frighten yourself absolutely witless. I daren't take any more on. I'm going to need to clone Mike and myself at this rate. Right, in this view that we're looking at, there used to be another folder. And that folder was for an app called Scanner Pro, which is from the same people who make this, Readle. The Scanner app scans. And it can scan straight into here, or it can scan into its own folder. Now, I love it scanning into its own folder. And my rationale for that is I have a whole backup system going on silently in the background in Scanner Pro. It uploads to iCloud. Those are my active files. It scans the raw files into OneDrive and it makes a backup in Google Drive. If I scan something, I can bin it. It's backed up 7 ways from Sunday. But obviously you can see in there, no files. So I've got no folder for Scanner Pro. It's not there. I can get to my Scanner Pro files That's not an issue, because over on the left-hand side, in addition to the files that are in my PDF Expert files, there's also a connection to the Files app. Oh, brilliant. Something went wrong. Try again. There we go. So I've tried again. All right. And from there, I can get to my Scanner profiles. If we look down at the favourites, Scanner by Riedel. If I tap on it, there they are. There's all my notes from Scanner Pro that I have scanned. But that means going in there and drilling down for it, and I don't want to do that. I just wanted it there in front of me. And they've taken that away. What they have still got is this. Down in the lower right-hand corner on that plus button, if I tap on there, you can create a folder, create a PDF from a file, and scan a document. Now, they added that back when they got absolutely hammered on Twitter for taking it away. The reason they took it away in this version is they're going to add it back as a pro feature. You're seeing this, aren't you? Bait and switch, bait and switch. But because the scanning feature isn't available yet, they've been pressurised to add it back. So I will show you that shortly. Then you've got your import stuff, and then you've got your from the cloud stuff. So you have access from this interface to everything that you need to do. The connections in there are the Files app within iOS. Then you've got your PDF Expert folder on iCloud. That should be showing you pretty similar to your My Files, basically. That's your iCloud stuff. So you'll see in there, I've got a different set, but I can hook those in to my Files section in there. Then I have access to the computer. So if I go to that URL on my computer and then type in the secret code, I would be able to access files directly from my computer. Of more significance to me is to make sure I've got access to Google Drive. And if you saw how quick that was, there was no spinning and thinking about it for a while. It was instant. Google Drive. Dropbox, same thing. Box, they are very fast. Those are my 4 primary online services. One thing that drives me mad, and I had to get in touch with them and suggest it. This was about a year ago. And it was, really? People want to do that? I said, yeah. If you look at Google Drive, it says Google Drive. Dropbox says Dropbox. Now, I know they've got icons as well, but would I really want to see 4 that say Elaine Giles? No, because I'm not logged in here to other people's accounts. They're all mine. Google Drive had my email address as the name. Dropbox, I think, had my name. OneDrive had my email address. And as you can see, Box has got my name. And I would rather it said Box. And you didn't used to be able to do anything about that. But now you can. So if I go down to Box in here, oh no, is it this bit? It should be. Or is it not that bit? There it is, it's connections. You see, this is the point. It should be obvious and it's not. Right, in your connections, on the ... you do have the ability to delete, and now you have rename. So I can actually just put in their Box, which is what I would want to see. Now I'm happy with my interface. See, can't help myself. Okay, so we know everything that's there. Any of these files and folders, so from up here, say I've got a whole folder structure going on in there, or in my PDF Expert, I can take one of these, or any of them that I want. So say our parish's rotas, they're fairly flexible, and I can add it as a favourite, and then I can just straight go in there. So you've got your favourites down the bottom as well. Now, we've made... Oh, you've got different views in here as well. You can have it as a list if you want it as a list. You can have it as a grid. You can sort it differently. You've got oldest, biggest, and you can do selects if you want to process multiple. So say you want to move those 2 somewhere else. You have the ability on the left-hand side to copy, move, compress, duplicate, make a new folder with the selection. So if I wanted to consolidate those 2 folders into one folder, I could do, or I could delete them. I can even share them via email, upload them, or the share sheet. You can mark with coloured tags or add the pair of them to favourites. So it's fairly fully featured with what you can actually do. I should actually be able to do that with that, depending on what data is in it. Let's find something that's fairly small, like the rotas. They're a pain, but they're small. And let's do a compress. And there you go. It says archive pending. There was nothing in the videos folder and only 3 items in the rotas folder, but it's complete down at the bottom. So you've got built-in zip capabilities as well. Right. Let's have a look in here. I saw a question. No, it's disappeared. Where's it gone?
Neil,
what do I use Box for? Very limited, to be honest. If we go into Box, you can see I've got backups. Mainly the photos. If I go into the photos, you will see loads of photo folders. And what I do with these, they go back to 2017. These are the photos of that group that we're in. You know the Brooklands 196 thing? Every time we go somewhere, we take a load of photos. And sometimes I'm charged with taking the photos, and they're all the events that I have been charged with taking the photos. So, let's have a look what we've got in here. Oh, that was a good one of you, wasn't it, in President's Sunday? I think, yep, all the photos are in there. So what I do with them is I send a link to the person who coordinates all of the photos, and I use Box for that. I know I could put them in Dropbox, but I don't like to selectively sync with Dropbox. I like to just synchronize Dropbox. So I don't want a lot of files in it. I could use OneDrive, but the sharing on OneDrive is a bit off. I'm never quite sure. It doesn't work in the way my brain works. I could put them in Google Drive, but then I've got issues with Google Photos, and some photos would be in Google Photos and some wouldn't. So I actually just made the decision. These are, yes, I took them, but I'm sharing them with somebody else. Don't we have a good time? Look at that was before lunch as well, that cake eating session that happened. I just put them in Box and I share the entire folder with the person concerned, who is actually Stuart, who is bang in the middle there, eating a cake. So that's pretty much the only thing I use Box for. But with Box, I have 50 gig. And I've had 50 gigs since 2011. It was a promotion that ran, so I actually have a decent amount of storage on there. Certainly enough for these photos for the next 20 years, I'd expect. So that's what I use Box for. Mike uses Box much more than I do, which is what he's saying now. So you like Box, don't you?
Yeah.
Right, so let's get back to where I was, was I on files? No, I was on my files up there. Right, so we've made that file there, which is the blank one. But let's have a look at other files that you can make and things that you can do. So let me move that out. I'm liking this stand, Mike. I've got a stand that holds 2 iPads. Talk about gratuitous. But it works very well because I'm demonstrating this iPad and I've got the running order on the iPad behind it, so you can't say fairer than that. Right, so you can create from in there, or you've got that dedicated create screen up from the left hand side. You've seen me create the first one. I'm actually going to go into that file that I created and show you some of the features. So fingers crossed it doesn't decide to take a funny on itself. The reason we've got this screen mirroring and document and screenshot thing going on at the bottom is because to show this to you via my computer, I have to AirPlay it. And when I AirPlay it, the app is thinking it's I'm trying to present it, which obviously I am and I'm not, if you know what I mean. So I'm just going to steer away from that thing at the bottom and hope for the best here. Right, you have your annotation tools as well across the top there. Demonstrating those will make much more sense when I have a file that's got some typed stuff in it. But I did want to show you that you do have, they're showcasing this feature, stickers. Tantamount to makeup on emojis, which is my bugbear of the year. But you have different categories here. Raccoons that you can download. They are actually quite cute, aren't they? Oh, I'm liking him. He's cute. So I think you do actually have to download them to install them, but you can see they take seconds. Now I've got a rather cute raccoon. Not seeing the use of this in a professional environment, are you, Mike? Hey, they've been pushing these stickers for forever, so I'm going to see them. Right, so I've got that one. I think I then need to tap the plus, and then I can download the... Oh, there is education. Let's have the education. We have educational people here. There we go. They could be useful. potentially. I'll download them. I like the apple. Let's stick the apple in. Let's have him. So there is these lots of stickers that you can have. I was going to download the dog. I am a dog person. Oh, yes. These look like my boy. He was a giddy dog, wasn't he, Mike?
That about professional environment, but you should see the stickers and GIFs that people put on workplace as well.
Well, there you go. I'm just going to download the lot. I actually do think that the calendars are potentially useful. I will demonstrate why I think they are potentially useful, but they are definitely potentially useful. This could be something that they do allow in the future. Maybe purchasable. Don't know. They could well extend that. But we need a grumpy cat, don't we? Oh, he looks like a grumpy cat. See, the dog's always excited and the cats tend to be grumpy. So there's your stickers. What I was thinking that would actually potentially be useful for. If you want to get rid of them, you can just delete. As it says there, you can flip them if you want them the other way. And again, delete them. But what I did think they could be useful for is... I don't want a note. No. What do I want? It was one of the features in here. It was this one. I'm going to go along the top in order first. You can edit PDFs. So you can edit the text, edit images, add links, and you can redact stuff. Now, again, obviously, that's going to make more sense when I open a file that's got text in it. But on the fill and sign, which is something you can only do with the Pro thing, there is an option for a stamp. And the stamps that are included are things like approved, not approved, final draft, comments, confidential, you name it. But at the bottom, you've got a sign here. So if you'd put a sign there on a contract, as it were, you'll notice you can't flip that. I was disappointed with that. I thought that would be good to be able to flip it. But never mind. You just have to put it on that side of it. I thought it would actually be quite handy back in the stickers to choose a date and say, you know, you've got to have that returned by the 12th. Because you can scale these things and pop it on the edge like that. So I can see uses for that, you know, as long as you don't put a dog on a legal contract. Unless it's about dogs, of course. Wondering whether to stump up for Dropbox or shift everything over to OneDrive and buy more space when I need. Do you have an Office subscription, Graham? Because if you do, you can get 6 terabytes of data. So rather than paying £2 a month for 100 gig, you could get 6 terabytes for about £50 a year. That would be one option. We did not go with OneDrive. We've got the subscription, but that's not our primary cloud because Google Drive is by far, and I mean by far, the most advanced cloud. It's not obvious in what way it is by far the most advanced cloud. I could do a demo of that if you like. We basically switched to that when we switched our calendars to it. But we found after that there was a heck of a lot of features that it had that were amazing. However, you could need a Dropbox anyway, because Dropbox has just gone to 3 devices. Now, there are workarounds to that, but they are not pretty. Not by a long way. So you can only have Dropbox active on 3 devices. So Mike piped up and said, that's not a problem. I've only got my iPad, my Mac, and my Surface. And I said, just a minute. You've got your Mac, your iPad, your Surface, your second iPad, and your phone. And you're about to buy another phone. And he went, oh. So already, Mike's got 5 devices, and you're only allowed 3. One of the problems with Dropbox for me is I don't need more storage. But I use Scrivener. Scrivener powers my emails. Scrivener powers the show. I need access to Scrivener. My alternative is, the only way Scrivener synchronizes is with Dropbox, and it does that when there's a good wind. It's not the best, but it's the only way it synchronizes. So I am either going to have to dump Scrivener out of my mobile workflow or stump up for Dropbox. That's why I said when I read out those subscriptions, and Dropbox is pending. Pending. I'm in the testing mode at the moment. At the moment, I'm grandfathered onto it. That's exactly where I'm at, Graham. I've got about 12 devices, and the minute I need to change one, it's going to stop working. It will work on 3, but what will happen is it will sign me out on everything. I've got it on 2 laptops, 3 desktops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 iPads. It's going to stop working and it's going to be a calamity. It's being logged in to 3 simultaneously. So you can't. If it did it like Office, it wouldn't be bad, but it doesn't. So you can only have 3 active logins. You could have it installed on the other ones, but then you'd be logging in and out like a maniac. There are workarounds. Would you like to know what they are? They're free workarounds. If you have... So, Graham, you've got your 6 devices. What you would need to do to make it work, carry on working for free, or take it on a subscription, would be you would need to log out on 3 of them, create another account, log into that second account on that one, and then share a folder or folders between the 2 accounts. That's the way around it. I've seen somebody do that for 9 devices. But to me, it's just messy. It's messy. But it's cheap. OneDrive does now do on demand. It's the sharing that's absolutely shocking by comparison to what Google Drive can do. The other thing that Google Drive does, I can't remember where I found out about it because I've never even seen it documented. You can have the same file in 2 locations at the same time. I can show you that in a demo if you like, because we've got a video review process set up, and it's the only way the video review process would be workable. Without that same file, 2 locations, even on your desktop, because of Google Drive file stream, as you've just mentioned, without that, it wouldn't work. I think that was the moment I said to you, that's it, I'm done, I'm going Google Drive. There were a couple of other reasons, but that one was the biggie. That one was amazing. Right, so back to what we were doing in here. Now we've got dogs and cats and we've got signs and stuff. While we've got this one, I will show you signing. Now, this is something that was available in the previous versions. It works pretty similar, but is now only available on the Pro one, which is we have signatures up here. These 2 signatures, good evening, Charles, have pulled through from the old version. So there's mine and there's Mike's. So to use my signature, just tap it and then put that signature where you like. You can move it around and you can scale it. Yeah, you can even flip it. There you go. And I've also got my... Oh, what could I do with Mike's signature? But there you go. There's Mike's as well. Now, you can create a new signature. So there's your ability to create a signature. So I'm using my pencil. Let's put Siri on there. And save. Then tap where you would like it to be, and there is Siri's signature. Now, going through that process has added Siri's signature to the signatures. You can, of course, select and then delete the one you don't want. But there's another option in here, which is the one on the right, that says customer signature. Now, what that is there for is so you can tap it, and your customer can come in here. So Siri, customer. There we go. So that's my customer's signature. And OK. It lets me insert that into the document. But when I go back to my signatures, it's not there for reuse. It's a one-off signature. I can, however, tap on it and go in and out of it. And I have properties. So I could change the colour and I could change the thickness of it. So if it's a little bit on the thin side, if that looks better, and I've got a few colours that I can use there as well. So that's the signature. So let's put that where it says sign here. There we go. So we looked at the stamps. We've looked at the... Oh, those stamps, dear me. They're stickers. So stickers and stamps, we've looked at that. We've looked at the signature. Right, let's head off. Oh, one of the other things I can show you here is, this is a brand new feature that they are getting giddy about, is the ability to make your own favourite tools on the favourites command. Me, less than thrilled with that. I'd rather know where something was, but yeah, we'll go for it. So you could choose a highlight. You could actually choose a highlight colour. So if I wanted to add that one, And then I can choose another one to add, and it could be another highlight. And I think that is where that would come into its own. So now on my favourites, I've got different highlights that I could use. And you tap on the controls there next to the green icon to get back into it and add another tool. So if you wanted to be able to add a signature to it, you could add that one there. Or if you're doing a lot of work where you are striking out, you could add that, the ability to strike out. And as you saw, where's the strikeout gone? You could strike out in different colours. So you could have different coloured tools up there. So while I was less than thrilled, once I realised you could have pre-configured, the same tool pre-configured in lots of different ways, I warmed up to it slightly. So that's your favourites option. Right, let's go back into here. And I've got a file. Right, it's this one here, which is our parish's newsletter. It's only a short thing. I designed the template. I did not put the rest together. But if I tap on the ... I need to show you that there is, it's got the information. It tells you it's a PDF, tells you the date it was created, and it tells you the size, and it's 4.2 meg. Right, because one of the things that you can do is obviously reduce the file size, which we're going to come on and look at. But at the moment, all we want to do with it is just open it. And there it is. Now, that was the actual file that I scanned whilst in said field in deepest Cheshire. If I bring that up, you can see it was bent at the corner, and it captured the fact it was bent at the corner. But the rest of that was scanned with it on a car seat, in the pouring rain, howling wind, and I don't think that's bad. You've got another little bit of a mark there where you can just see the light over on the right, but not bad. Not bad at all. All right, so let's have a look at what you can do with this. Well, the first thing you can do is manage the pages. So obviously these are in the right order, but if they weren't, I'd just tap a page and drag and drop it to the right place. So tap, hold, drag. Simple as that. Tap, hold, drag. You also have here, as you can see at the top, you can insert, you can copy a page. So we could duplicate that page, one page copied. Then we could put that in. So tap on the third one. Didn't actually want to go into there. And paste it in. Tap to paste. Yes, there you go, paste it in. So I've copied it, I've pasted it. Want to delete that, tap the delete. Disappeared. You can extract pages. So if I just wanted that mass times at the end extracted on its own, I could just tap that, give it a name which makes sense. So mass times for the week, save to my files, and save. I close that and go back in here. There is the mass times file, which will then open up on its own. Right, now let's get back out of that one and back into the one I was working with. Go into the pages option at the top. So I'm not finished with this. I've got this one at the end. And while I can turn my iPad round, most people would like to see that the proper way round. Because if we have a look at it, what that looks like is that. And you would have to lock your iPad screen or put your head on a ratchet to 90 degrees to read it. But in here, you can actually rotate. So I'm tapping that rotate button, and it rotates it. But you can also, I'm doing it with my fingers this time. Look at that. You can just drag and drop. You're supposed to be able to drag and drop it around. There you go. You can drag and drop it round. If I then close it, the first 3 pages are the right way to read, and so is the last page. Excellent. Liking that. So these are all the page management options that you've got. You can also in here, so let's go back to the file management. Let's say I wanted to merge, bizarrely, my note with my mass times. You can select, you can choose both of those files, and one of the advanced options is that you can merge them. And now it's making a merge document. So it calls it mass times merged. That'll do. I'm not worried about what it actually calls it. But if I open that up, so come out of select mode into there, I should now have the mass times and the legal pad page that I had. So very simple to merge files as well. So let's start closing some of these down before we drive ourselves crazy. Right, now With one of these files now, let's look at editing the text and editing the images. So in here, now remember, this started life as a piece of paper. Right, but I can go in here. Let's go down to the bottom there. I can actually start working with that text. So if I wanted to highlight it, let's highlight it here. Are you going to let me highlight? Oh, now why aren't you? That could be because I'm screen mirroring. And if I don't screen mirror, all heck could break loose. Let's try it. Oh, Lord. Right, you're now seeing the document. Let me see if that's making much of a difference. It's not. So, I'm going to go back to the screen mirroring. Now I'll have to resize this because we don't want it tiny, do we? I've got a moth on my iMac screen, Mike. I'm glad you can't see that. It's walking across the document. It's freaking
over here.
It's freaking me out. Right. It could well be I need to go into the annotations and turn that tool on. Let's try that. You gonna let me do that? Oh, you're not, are you? Why not? I'm not sure what's going on with that, but I'm going to come back to that. What I was hoping to demonstrate, and this may or may not work now, is I want to create a link. So that at the moment is not clickable. But if I draw a link over it and then specify a destination, I can either make it a link to an internal page within this document, or I can make it a web link. And that is going out to a web link. Parishes.church. Unfortunately, I have to type that. It's not one of the pre-configured. And OK with it. So I've added a link. Now, if I go back into annotation mode at that point, it doesn't look like there's a link on it. But if I tap it, it will go out. I built that website. There we go. And there is the link out. So working perfectly. You could put that anywhere. You put that in one of these stories if it was relevant. There's usually some in there, but it's the summer and everybody's on holiday, so no one's going anywhere in terms of webs at the moment. But you could do that anywhere within the document. You should be able to edit the images, but the mood it's in. This is because I'm sharing the screen, I think. Let's go in and edit and see if we can edit that image. There we go. Image. So you can choose an image, swap the image, add images, whatever you need to do. Let's see if we can there. Oh, now that one is adding text. So if there was something there that was missing, so let's tap over there. What would make sense to put in there? Let's have a look. Let's say, or 230. Then you could put in there, I'm tapping and holding, saying text, and then let's put bring cake. So if there was something missing from that document and you don't have the original, then you can add what you need. And you can format that in any way that you want as well. So those are all your editing abilities. Now, one of them that was hysterical, might love this before. I was playing around with it and I just picked one of these stories and thought, let's have a look at the redact command. So let's just redact a story. Very straightforward. Just draw around it. So I thought to myself, interesting. And then what I was trying to do was edit the redaction. And as you may, I'm tapping, I'm moving, I'm jiggling, nothing's happening. Be very careful when you redact something. I couldn't even undo it. I'm not sure if it's supposed to, but it didn't. Now, what they said was if you move pages, so if I swiped back, no chance, it then will not edit it. But it was supposed to remain editable while I was on that page. But be very careful with that because it didn't for me. Right, the 3 pro features, let's have a look at those. We've seen one, creating your own tool set. That is what that is talking about in there. Right, we have 2 others. So let's, with this one, go back. In fact, let's open that up and close it down properly, just in case it gets giddy with itself. So we'll close it down properly. Right, this file here, if you remember, was 4.1 meg. It was actually 4.5 when I scanned it, so I don't know what happened. Maybe I've made changes in here and it's compressed it a little bit. But compress, not compress. Where is it? Reduce file size. Was that compress? Yeah, maybe it is in here. No, I thought that it wasn't. No, I want to reduce the file size. Right, so I've opened it, reduce file size. Now again, if you were to do this on the desktop version, it would prompt you. And it would say, are you sure you want to do that? And would you like to make a backup? In here, just does it. Now it gives you 4 options. There's a lossless one, which is 4.2, a high one, 4.2. The medium is going to promise 1.3. Medium's usually what I go for. Good compromise between graphics and file size. But if you want to see what a low quality one would be, you can tap it. And that would be less than half the medium. But I'll go for the medium. Tap reduce. That's it. It's done. So let's go back into there and tap that. 1.3 meg. Now I did have another copy there, so we could look and do a comparison. And yeah, it has compressed it down to 1.3 meg. If I open that up, we've not actually lost anything. To a quick look in terms of, and that one isn't rotated because I didn't rotate it. We've not lost anything in terms of quality there. It looked as bad as that to start with. See, it was a scan. I would much rather that was in colour, but it was a black and white scan. Now, seen a question as well. Do you have OCR on in Scanner Pro for the import? I think I did. I'm sure I did when I did the import on that because it was in Scanner Pro. But I'm going to show you the import. I have something here to import. Is that moth that's on the table now dead, Mike? No, it's not. That answers that question. So, when I turn my camera on, my iPad, let's get that on. Right, I am turning a light on, otherwise no one's going to see anything. But what I'm trying to do here is show you what this can do. So, I'm picking the iPad up. I'm going to rotate it, which could cause all... No, I won't rotate it. It'll cause all kinds of havoc. But I'll go down to the plus in the lower left-hand corner, and I have Scan Document on, which will take me out to Scanner Pro. I'll do it that way, so it's that way round. The moth's disappeared, you'll be pleased to know. Right, wants me to move closer. Got it. Let's turn it over. That's from our local theatre that we frequent. And it's done the scan. So at that point, I'm going to go and look at the 2 pages, which are there. That one, it's done in black and white, but I can edit it if I want to. Let's have a look at the other one. If I would like that to be colour, I can choose that. So it has captured it in colour, and that's not at all bad. But the other page is just black and white, so I don't really need to think about that. So I've got my file. Tap on Done, and it takes it straight back into Scanner Pro, into PDF Expert. From whence, of course, I'm going to need to go into the pages and do a swift rotation there. And probably that one would be up there, be the first one, and close it down. So at the moment, it's hooking into Scanner Pro. But what they are promising is that that will be independent and it will be in PDF Expert. And in relation to the question about OCR in Scanner Pro, which yes, I did, they're going to bring OCR into PDF Expert. So that'll be a new feature and that will be Pro only as well. Now, I think we had one more item, didn't we? Yes, we did. Which was this ability to convert stuff, which is available from that Create PDF. Now, I actually did this, but obviously you're going to want to see it. So I'm going to tap on Slides. And the first thing it needs me to do is go and find the files. Now, you've got all your connections there that you saw in the sidebar. So even down to the favourites. This one I'm going to need to access through the Files app. And I'm going to need to go and find my Keynote folder, which is where all my Keynote files live. Where are we? There, Keynote. Now, I think at the moment that there's quite a few of them, as you see, and some of them are absolutely huge. So what I did, if we sort these by date, I made a PDF Expert demo of 4.5 meg, rather than the presentation that's running this show, which is 210. So I'm going to tap on that one, which is basically the pages from the presentation about PDF Expert. So at the bottom of the screen under Favourites, it's saying Converting. So what it's doing is it's actually reading in a file from iCloud, which was created on the desktop, and there it goes. Now, I did actually do it with the presentation from last week, which is the one above that says After Hours 0036. But I'll show you that one first. Anything wrong with that? Can anybody see anything wrong with that? Most of that's graphics, and it's done a pretty good job. You obviously haven't got the transitions animations, but there are things in there. So those are the slides. Anybody spot anything? Or is that fine and dandy? Let's go back and look at this one, which was the whole thing. This is the big one from 2 weeks ago, I think. No, last week. Anybody notice anything? You'll probably notice it on that one. Yes, fonts, bit of an issue. That font was actually Trajan Pro. Now, don't blame PDF Expert for that, because if I'd have opened up that presentation in Keynote on my iPad, it would still have balked, because that font isn't on my iPad. So it's not done a bad job. Everything... Oh, I've just realised, Mike. Jane, who missed this, unless she watched the replay, I think this was the ABBA one. So we'd gone off to Gawsworth. Jane, you do not want to miss this. We went to see ABBA, and we found a fifth member. I'm so glad I've got access to that picture. I got in such trouble last week for not asking permission to use it. Yes, Mike enjoyed himself. Little birthday treat. There you go. So it didn't do a bad job with any of that. None of it at all. It took a little bit longer for that one because there are 51 slides. But in an emergency, I could present from that if I absolutely needed to. And you can, of course, take that. I'm not going to do this because it will all resize and it'll be problematic. But you can just see the document or screenshot, etc. of it. So I could tap there and you can see just that interface. I wish the background could be darker. Might have to investigate whether that's possible. So there you go. Right, they are all the pro features inside PDF Expert Pro. Yeah, that's what I thought, a white border on it. Is that in the settings? Could we make that darker? Where would that be? Nope, I don't think so. PDF viewer, let's have a look. No option for that on there. I wonder if I change it to the classic interface, whether when I'm viewing the PDF, it would be dark. And the answer to that is no. Not good at all. So unless it's hiding in here somewhere else, none of these. Is it in advanced? No, it's not in. That's something they're going to have to add back by the look of it, I would say. No, it's not there now. I wish it could have a dark background. Jane, if you think that's bad, you should have seen the one from the week before. Do I have a quick access to the one from the week before, which I personally think is worse? I'll find it, Jane. Right, so PDF Expert. Right, let's get that out of the way and move along. Right, that's poor Geronimo going to bed. Right, last week was ABBA, wasn't it, Mike? Which means the week before, let's come out of that and let's open it up. He's going to be very annoyed. That was last week, that was the week before. The 9th, that'll be the one. That'll be the one. Oh, it is. Right, let's have a look, especially for Jane, who's joining us today. It was the week at MacBites headquarters, but not this week.
Graham's saying I'd look good on a postage stamp.
Oh no, Jane, you need to watch every week. We went to Gawsworth. It's looking familiar, this, isn't it? We got front row seats. But we were there with friends watching Queen. Just look at that plate, Jane. If you thought the ABBA one was bad, and it got worse than that. Brace yourself. There you go, Jane. I'm just going to leave that there long enough for you to really, really suffer. Can I just say, I was walking around with Mike, and yes, everybody said he needs a better bra. Actually, we have an update on this. Can I just say, very, 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 very dear friend of ours bought him a bra for his birthday. So all is now well. Right, you couldn't want to miss that, Jane. You need to come every week. This is what we do every week. Right, we are heading into linking Notion databases. Okay, right, 2 databases. Database 1 and Database 2. Now, I'm using the term database because that's what Notion does. That's a very good point, Mike. Hopefully Melinda understands what MacBites is about. We're just crazy and love tech. That's what it's about. Right, I'm using the term databases here, but you may have thought of this as tables. So basically, it's two separate elements of data that need to be linked in a certain way. Okay? It would make more sense if I told you what was in those tables stroke databases. So the example that you've seen of MacBites is we have all of our episodes in one table. And then the items that we have in each podcast is in a different table. The reason is referential integrity. And if you have never heard of referential integrity, you don't need to worry about it. It's COD and COD's rules, which are the rules of database design. What it means is, if we did this, or we tried to do it, in one table, in one place, so we couldn't do it in the table database on the left. We would have to add the elements of metadata about the podcast episode to the item in the right-hand side. So let's take a practical example here. Good night, Jane. What did we have in the last show, Mike? We had the WWDC Roundup. So we put that as an item in the podcast. But if we left it in there with no number, how would we know what show it was in? So we'll put the show number in there then. That will make sense. Right, we come back to it. We know it was in show 121, but what was that show called? Oh, it was called Predictive Analytics with Mrs. Brown's Bunions. Okay, I'll put that in there as well. What date was it released? Oh, that was Monday, August. I'll put that in there then as well. And the problem is, once you've got 20 items in that show, in that particular podcast, on the right-hand side, you've got the same data stored in your database 20 times that doesn't need to be. Because if we decide we're not going to call the show Predictive Analytics with Mrs. Brown's Bunions, how many times do we have to change it? 20. If the release date slips, as it sometimes does, how many times do we need to change it? 20. It would be a lot easier if there was one record for the podcast in the podcast episodes on the left, which contains data like status, date, release date, duration, URL, file name. There's lots of data that relates only to the podcast. And then the other data that's to do with each individual story is in the table on the right. Now, that's the principle of referential integrity in a database. Simple as that. And it works if you're not making podcasts. It works if you have a list of clients. You hope your list of clients, that each client, you will be doing multiple projects for them. So one element on the left, client called Fred, multiple projects on the right. And what you would do is link each individual client to each project that you have with them. Same with orders. Orders on the left, items ordered on the right. It might make it a lot easier for you to visualize this if you look at it like that. 1 podcast in the database on the left, 6 items on the right. And this is where it gets really clever. You will, of course, have more than 1 episode. When you've got 2 episodes, it looks like that. The blue podcast has 3 stories, and the gold podcast has 3 stories. But there's only 1 entry for each podcast on the left, and only 1 entry for each item within the podcast on the right. But you've optimized your storage and you've optimized working with it as well. That's the beauty of it. That's as complicated as it gets, you'll be pleased to know. Actually doing it is a complete doddle. All right, so let's go into Notion. So this is my Notion setup. It is actually mine. It's live. And what you're looking at here is that in action. The page that you're looking at, after hours 37, is an entry on the left. There is 1 entry. And the metadata associated with it is status, who's in charge of it, what the linked items are, what the show title is, what the show art is, the release date, the duration, show notes, show URL, chat log, recording notes. If we didn't design it like that, all of that information would need to be duplicated in each item. These are the items that I'm covering. Would have been nice if the Notion one was in there, but never mind. So that's the one we've just looked at, right? If I open up that, it has different metadata. It's assigned to me, it's complete, it's a demonstration. It's not in Scrivener because I don't use Scrivener for after hours. There's a show link in there. That's the link between the show and the individual stories. Points and Points Complete is a system that we use to work out how long it's going to take us to do something. We've actually got a 3rd level of this, but forget that for now. And then I have a show type. Where I may be talking about this. And these are the features that I've just demonstrated to you. But what isn't in the metadata of this individual story is anything about the show other than the link back to it, which is why that type there has an arrow on it. It's a link back. Now, I can show you that, but that's not making it, is it? So let's make it. Let's go do it. From scratch. So, in the private area, I'll add a page. And we will call this my new podcast. So that's just a page. It's just somewhere to hold this information. Right, then I need 2 tables, databases, call them what you like. First one's going to be the new show. So I need a page there, which is going to be the shows table. At the moment, it's just a page. Didn't I call that my new show? What's going on here? Shows table. Where's that just disappeared to? What are you doing to me? It says untitled. Mike, weirdness is happening. That was my new show. Let's make sure that that's okay. Shows table should be 1 level down, not 2 levels down. Do you know what? I'm going to delete that. We will do that again. We will make this work. A page. Page. Shows. Let's make sure that's working. Shows. Awesome. Right. I call mine content items. You can call it what you like. I'm just making a new page to put it on. Simple as that. Now, I've done it with pages. I'm going to drill down into that. Right, so I have my shows and my content items. These 2 pages are going to be where my databases are. Now, you could actually put the database straight in there if you want. I find it easier to go down a page, go down a level. So if we look at the MacBite shows here, there's links, show titles, and then shows. and the shows are in there. And the reason that I do that is it helps me keep it flexible to be able to add extra information in if I want. Mike didn't do that. So the Brooklyn shows here, you'll see there's no extra information. Mine has got links and show titles, and there's the shows. Mike's shows are coming straight off this page. We'll be changing that, won't we, Mike? Because it doesn't give us any flexibility at all. But it's just a different way of designing it. I find that is a much better way of working. So if I show you what that looks like, this is the database we're going to build. But I end up having, I can track the after hours, I've got show titles, and I've got extra links, and I've got a link to the live events. So I'm able to put that in the same place as the data, because the data is subordinate to this page. In Mike's case, it's not. You go to there, and I can't get above this to put any information. But that's why I've built it this way, so I can. All right, so in my shows, I could put any kind of information there. So let's think of something like, put a quote in. Just do it. So a little bit of inspiration before I actually start. And I'm putting that in to show you that the database I'm going to build lives inside this page. Has anybody looked at Coda as opposed to Notion? I didn't. But I'm aware of it. Okay, Peter, we will catch up. We will catch up. Right, so I'm going to make the table. So all I need there is a table. I put data, but table inline. I'm making a table inline to this page. There's my table. Remember what this is? It's my shows table. So I'll put shows table. It always comes up with name, tags, and files. But you can edit that as much as you like. I guess rather than name, it would make more sense to call it show title. So we can go in and put show title. Now, the meta that you put in here is completely up to you. There's a few ways to do it. You can add in a column using the plus. So one would be show number. You can make that a different format. You could have it as a number if you wanted, but you're not really going to use the show number to calculate, so I'm going to leave it as text. Now, you might not actually need files, so I'm going to go there and delete files. I do want to do that. Don't particularly need tags either, to be honest, so I'm going to delete that as well. So I have my show title and I have my show number. So far, so good. It would make sense to add a status. And for that, it would make sense if it was a select. You have two different types of select, single select or multi-select. Well, a status can only really be one of a few things. So I'm going to make it a select and not a multi-select. And I have 3 blank records. So I'll just put first show as the title so you know which is which. And then second show and third show. Oh, I'm very adventurous, aren't I? Right. Obviously, I can put numbers in these if I want to do that. I've got the field there, so I might as well. Status, there's nothing in there at the moment. Now, this one probably isn't started. None of them are going to be started at the moment, so I'll make that not started. When I click on there, not started is now available as an option, but some of them will be in progress at some point. So let's put an in progress one, and some of them at some point will get completed. So I'll put completed in. Now, I would much rather see these as different colours. So I like it green when it's complete. In progress is fine as that, but not started would be red to me. And I actually think the red and the orange are pretty similar, so I would make the in progress lemon in the middle. And it's as simple as that. Now, actually, none of these are started. So I'm going to choose not started for all of them. Now, you can add to that whatever you want. So you've seen the MacBites one. We've got a lot more meta information. But that is actually enough to get you going. But for completeness, release date. Property type, date. You can put a date in there. Let's say you want your new show to go live on the 2nd of September. You can even in there change the date format. So maybe you would like the format to be day, month, year. That's much more British, isn't it? Like that. And then if you were going to be weekly, the next one would be the 9th and the next one would be the 16th. So we've got 3 shows. What we don't have at the moment is any content for those shows. So let's go back to my new show. This was where we were putting the content. So just to remind you that I've made this so I can put extra content in. All right, still just do it. And then I'm going to put in a table for content items. So my show's content items. Now, then you've got to think about what would you like those to be called. Now, if we look at the MacBites one, there's MacBites. So let's go to today's show. Right, we have actually just called them content items. If I click on one of these like that, it's just got a title across the top and then data underneath it. So let's use that same principle. In the content items, we'll call this. Now, what would we be covering in our, let's say new iPhones. We were always going to cover new iPhones, aren't we? What meta do you want about that? Now, you could have tags. You may have files, but I don't think we'd have files. Somebody delete the files. But I definitely had an assignee. So who's in charge? Should we put assignee? And then go find it. And you can choose a data type of person. And if that person is in the system, so I'm in the system, Mike's in the system. Mike, you're doing the new iPhone, so I've assigned Mike to it. You can reorganize these columns. Now, in the tags, you could rename that, but let's say story type. In fact, let's say content type. Not that I can't type story type, but I can't. We'll make that a select, not a multi-select. So the content type for that, let's say editorial. You may have a different content type. So you may have tutorial for something. You may have feedback. So I've created different content types. So for feedback, let's say email from Peter. There we go. And I'll deal with that one. And that leaves one that's going to be a tutorial. So let's put PDF expert in there. I'll do that one. Now, at that stage, you've got everything you need, but they're not linked up. You have your shows, you have your content items. Easiest way to do it, so I'm going to make this full page just so we've got a little bit of breathing room on both of these pages. Otherwise, it aligns it to the middle. I like full pages. Right, so my new show. I'm looking at the content items. Somewhere in here, I need to tell it what show that content item belongs to. Want to see that for real? Let's go to MacBites. Show production. We've got shows, content items. Now we've added 2 extra elements, which is prereqs and chat logs. Forget those. We've just got a 4-way combination going on. But that and that is exactly what I've created so far for the new show. So if I go into the content items, huge long list of content. And there's 400 items in that table. Some of them are complete, some of them not so. There's all sorts in there. But if I open up, let's say that one. Right, who it's assigned to, what the status is, what the section of the show is. This is all the meta. And in here, show link. Which show? Now that one says unplaced. We have a fake show called unplaced that we allocate content to until we decide where it's actually going. So we've got to think about that. But it's this element that creates the link. So let's go back into here, into content items, we're going to need another field. And that will be called show link. Its data type will be one of these advanced ones at the bottom, which is relation. And as it says there, allow pages in this database to reference pages in another database. So we'll make it a relation type. At this point, it needs you to tell it which database you want to pull stuff from. Now, I think we called it, did we call it show? There we go. Shows table from my new show, shows. So that's the breadcrumb to its location, and that's what it was called. So I want it to link to the shows table. Create a relation between the two. Now, if we go back, not done anything else other than add a field at the moment, we go back into the shows, we now have related to my shows, ... content. It's done that automatically for us. You don't need to leave it set to that. Oh no, we could call it content items. And now it's identical to MacBites. So let's go back to the content items. Right. Let's say each one of these is going for show 1, show 2, show 3. Right, in there at the moment. There are our shows. First show, second show, third show. So that one's going to go for the first one. This is going to go for the second one. And that one is going to go in the third one. But this one is probably feedback, like it says. So maybe we've had 2 lots of feedback from Peter, or we're doing it over 2 shows. There's nothing to stop you going in there and searching for another show. Is that one? Which one did I put that on? Where am I? So let's say second show. And now it's allocated to 2 shows. It's that clever. I didn't have to tell it was 1-to-1 or 1-to-many or whatever. It's now linked to 2 of those shows. That's great in this view, and I could add status of the item. So we've got a status for the show, but if you think about preparing a show, the entire show won't be finished until all of the items are complete. So the items may need a status of not started, which is 1, and our other was in progress. And we had complete. Now you'll notice it does randomly allocate these colours, which annoys me. But it's very simple to go in and fix it. So in progress, oh no, hang on, that one was green. Complete is green. In progress is yellow. And not started is red. So we've got one of each in there. Let's go back. Let's look at the shows. It has changed at this end because the content items are now populated. Better than that, when you go into the show, what on earth is going on here? Why is that not appearing in my show? Okay, not a problem. I can fix that. Right, in here, when I look at the show, I want to see everything from that show. Not a little link or whatever. I want to see all the details. If you think about it, this show, the one that you're watching right now, there it is. There is everything. I use all of this. I have checklists for what needs to be done pre-show. I have a link to the live events. I have a link to the YouTube control room. That's the YouTube block to embed it. Timings will get put in at the end. But here, that bit there, that is my demo. All of the stuff I'm going to use in the demo. It is the content items for episode 37 of After Hours, and that's all I'm seeing. I'm not seeing last week's, I'm not seeing next week's. If you're wondering why, underneath I've got another one that's looking familiar. It's exactly the same in terms of columns, but if we look across, it's the show link of unplaced. This is content we have either created or is in progress of being created, or is complete that hasn't yet been allocated to a show. And the reason that I like to see the content for this show and the content that isn't the content that's in abeyance at the moment is if I'm short on content, I'll dip into this and I'll pick something and I will add it to the content for this show. But back in our show, what that looks like is in the shows, in here where it's empty at the bottom, nothing there, I can create a special type of table. I'm not creating a new table. I am saying to it, link to an existing database. Create me a database on this page, but I don't want an empty one. I want it to pull data in that's relevant to what I want to do. So I want to create a linked database. Now, obviously, I've got all of these databases and I need to select a database. And sometimes the database isn't listed, like I've got all my databases, but the one I'm looking for, not there, which I have had problems with before. Sometimes, if I do it linked again, I can maybe start to type and it will find it. Was it my shows content items? There we go. So it's the content items for my shows. So let's click on that. It brings in, so let's open that as a page. It brings in all of the content related to all of the shows. But just a minute, that's not what I want, is it? No, that's not what I want. I don't want to see content for show 2 because this is show 1. So what you do, you filter it just for this show, where the show link contains first show. And you're done. So as I add new items to that, so let's say there's going to be new iPads. And let's say there's going to be a new watch. This is going to be expensive. I can see it coming. Right? I can whip through this. What type's that? That's going to be more editorial. New watch. That's going to be expensive, but I didn't put that in as a data type. I'll put it in as that. None of it's started yet. And that is how I work with it. Now, when we use different systems, we used to live in the content items table because it was the only table we had. And we used to filter it and pivot it and play around with it. And you got overwhelmed. But in here, when I'm prepping a show, so that was MacBites 121 that was out last week. The way we've done it, we have multiple shows in the shows table. And what I mean by that is when we go to the shows table, we have here MacBites 121, we have all the after hours, we have a MacBites Live, MacBites, we have a news show, more after hours, another MacBites Live, more MacBites. Yeah, as you go back, you've got different show types in there. But when you're focusing on an individual show, like MacBites 121, that doesn't matter. It works. It works whether you're doing an after hours or whether you're doing this. You'll notice in there were 2 stories that didn't actually make it. One was this Sherlocked one. It hasn't got a tick in it. It's been completed, but it didn't get put in Scrivener. And this subscription thing is rocking and rolling on, unfortunately. So that's going to be bumped for the next one. But you'll see in here, everything's complete. There's the link to the show. We have show type and prereqs as well. But, you know, basically, if I wanted to go back and look at the show, open it up, and there's the actual show, which in this case is one and the same. We've taken it a little bit further than that as well. I'm just contemplating whether I can do this and whether it's a good idea. But hey, let's do it. We've actually done the show. So it's complete. It's published. It's out there. It's got a date. It's got a duration. But if you look here, just under that bit there, there's the actual show. I could actually play it, which I will. I may regret this, but I'll do it. Hello and welcome to MacBites episode 121. I'm Elaine Giles. I'm here with my co-host Mike Thomas. In this episode, we're going postal as Daleks exterminate Doddle. Right, that was the intro to that episode of MacBites. So we embed the whole thing. Mike can check it from there. We can download it from there if we want to. Got a download option over here, so just stick that on the desktop. And down it comes. So it's exactly the same principle as what I've built today. Ours is just a little bit more advanced, but we have a shows table with 3 shows in it. We have a content item table that is linked to the shows via this field over here. So when I discussed this with Mike about how best to show this, I said, I don't really want to just take them back into the MacBites table because it can be overwhelming. That MacBites table has been 12 years in the brewing. It's got everything we need. Absolutely everything. But the basics of it, I mean, when we started, we used a shared internet notebook. We used Google Notebook. And there were 3 of us putting the show together, and that was what we used. When I look back at that, and I could probably, yeah, I'll sort that out while I explain. I'll show you. When I look back at how we did the show with that, with how we do it now, it's ridiculous. But I'll show you in here. That's the very first MacBites, and that's the show notes for it. There they are, and that came out of, that is actually, if you look at the date, 15th of March 2010, that came out of Google Wave. But that was how we used to manage the show, like that. They were put together by all 3 of us, weren't they? And we transferred it to, we transferred it to Wave after that. But we ran the show from that. Now, doing as much as we do now, there's no way we could run the show from that. So although they are in Scrivener, and one day I'll take you through that file, but they're in Scrivener as like a record. This really is going behind the scenes because this is episode 1 of MacBites, which was the 8th of October 2016. And the first thing we had to do was sort out the name for the show. And we put, there's our other names, Apple Bites. So that's got everything in it. But that's what we used to run the show from. But obviously, over time, we have improved the system so we can cover more stories, we can do more shows, and run 2 radio stations while we're actually at it. And this is the system that we use for that.
The 8th of October 2007.
Oh, 2007, you're quite right, it was.
2016.
Did I?
Yeah.
I was going to say 2006. No, it was 2007. It's all coming back to me now. So that is how you build these tables in Notion and how you link them together. I've got a couple of other examples of that, but I'm not going to do them tonight because we've got freebies to look at. Oh, we have freebies to look at. We have our usual freebies. So let me know with the Notion thing, was that useful? Can you now link tables? We have our usual freebies. Our usual freebies this week, pretty good, I thought. I like the one in the middle, which is a Photoshop file for Instagram stories. It's 7 days of Instagram stories. Do you know, just the fact they're the right size, I'm not bothered about the rest of it, and that I can open it in Affinity Designer Publisher photo is good enough for me. There's a font in there as well. The icons on the left I thought weren't actually a bad idea for the comic stuff. Neither is the middle one at the bottom, which is some stars. And making sure that you're still awake, the foliage brushes on the right-hand side, in the lower right-hand corner, which are for Photoshop, you can use those in Affinity. So I needed to know, do you use brushes in Affinity? And if you do, are you comfortable with them, or would you like to know more about them? Right, other place to go, which I will be showing you greatly, is dafont.com. Who's heard of dafont.com? It's one of the best sites for free fonts, both in terms of the number of fonts that they've got available and the range of fonts and how you find them. Because we are going to come on to Comic Creation Kit Part 6, which is our aim to replace Comic Life to create comics. And as I say, it is Part 6. And today we're looking at fonts. You've got to have the right fonts or it won't look like a comic. Now, when we originally looked at Comic Life ships with a lot of fonts in it, comic fonts, and they're great. They are also incredibly expensive when I went to find them, because the way Comic Life works, they provide you with the fonts. You can use them, you can export PDFs, you can export images. What you can't do is use those fonts inside Comic Life in any other application, which is a bit of a problem. The fonts themselves range from about $20 each up to $150 each. So what we needed was a good way of getting some fonts that were not expensive, which is where DaFont comes in. So I'll show you how DaFont works. Right, when you go to DaFont, so which ones am I on at the minute? I'm on Cartoon. Go to DaFont. What's listed and what you actually see, and you'll be, oh, shiny, and you'll hair off looking at those, is the very latest uploads of fonts. And they're usually pretty nice. I mean, that Ants Valley's nice, isn't it? And I could find a use for that Friday stroke. It looks like chalk on a board. But the power of DaFont is in this part at the top, bordered in red. Because what they do is they group the fonts by type, and they're pretty accurate. One of the ones I use is the stencil font. Now, it says stencil stroke army. And when you look at these, like top secret one there, that's good for a stencil. Gunplay works. But there is a definite overlap between army fonts. That one, that tape cover, looks like one of those old print machines where you used to print out a label onto very thick plastic. Once you got it stuck on something, you weren't getting it off. So they are very, very good in terms of how they organise the fonts. These are crying out, that Bronx by Street is crying out to be a book cover. I must do a book cover demo. So what we need to look at for what we're looking at the moment, we've got two. Oh, we're not limited to one, we've got two. There is cartoons and there's comics. There's actually two categories. In fact, if your comic is about horror, you've got a horror section as well. So you could use some fonts from the horror section. That slime one you would easily get away with being in a comic, or Friday the 13th. You've also got westerns, if you've got some kind of western stuff in there, and they all work brilliantly. So let's have a look at cartoons. What makes a cartoon font is usually they're kind of quirky, aren't they? They look childish in terms of the way they're put together. They don't look like a font should look, really. Some of them are akin to a brand. So the Pokemon font is akin to a brand. I think I actually did put in here once Harry Potter. And I did come up with a couple of Harry Potter fonts. Harry P and Harry Potter and the Dingbats. So you could search by, if you think, oh, it looked like such and such a programme. Another one I did many years ago was Murder, She Wrote. Now, you might not find it under Murder, She Wrote, but there is a font that looks identical to that. So let's see if we can find that. So Murder, She Wrote font. You can even put free if you want. And you will find it. There we go. That is just so perfect. That's the right font. So we were looking at the cartoon ones. So let's go back a couple of pages. Cartoons. There we go. Now, I have a whole range of them, but I don't actually use as many as these when I'm coming to use them. So I haven't downloaded the lot, and there is 102 pages full of them. Sometimes they look, you want one that's similar-ish. So you may have 12 different fonts, all from the same family, that look similar, but one will work much better than the other. So you're looking for something very similar. Other times you're not. Other times you're looking for something completely different, maybe like that caricature one or something like that. But you've got hundreds and hundreds of fonts to go at there. Give you an idea how I use them, not actually for comics per se, but I know we've got a lot of people with us who are not listening to MacBites. I have a whole range of fonts for MacBites, and we are quirky. We've said quirky, haven't we? That's a font that I use a lot with a little dot on it, which was the same one I used for Radio Gaga. And the reason I did that Radio Gaga one I extended the eye upwards and used the dot, the little dot that you can see on bunions there, as the centre of the waves at the top. Doing the dongle dance was the same font, but going backwards, these are more rounded fonts, and these don't have the dot over the eye. That one didn't have a comic font on. Don't know what happened there. But you can see they're not all the same. They don't all use the same font, but there's a definite theme to the posters. If you looked at that poster, you would know it was a MacBites as opposed to any other podcast, even if it didn't say MacBites on it. I drew that knit, believe it or not. Trolley Dolly from Hell was one of my favourites. Oh, and Blofeld's Cat and Dinner with George Clooney. You can imagine the fun we have on MacBites. Of course, there was always Mike's Bot Bot. We've seen Mike's Bot Bot before. We do not need to see Mike's Bot Bot again. But that's what I do with them. And they all do tend to be. There's a different one. That was Kidnapping Craig's Cat, so that's a kidnapping font. But they're all quirky types of font. They are not standard fonts. But they add... Oh, there's Mike's Bot Bot. There's a different one. Oh, I can't remember what that one's called, but I've seen it loads of times. And it just worked with the tape measure, which was made to measure, that one was called. So that's how I actually use them. And although these fonts look the same, like that Ice Ice Baby and this one, they're not the same font. They're of the same font family, but they're not actually the same font. So they're very similar, but not identical. So start off at the font, looking for your fonts. And I know they're all black and white, and you'd be looking to make them much more colourful when you're actually using them. But you need the right font first. Now, your second grouping is comic fonts. Badaboom is one of the ones that is actually shipped inside Comic Life. So you can get that one for free. Comica Axis, look familiar? One of my MacBites fonts. That adventure one there, I've used that one as well. I think I did that on one of the older shows. It was like a jungle thing. Oh, there's my boy. My boy. There is that font. So April Showers. Now, that font is actually the Indiana Jones font, and that's why I've done it kind of skewed. There's also another use of that somewhere much further back. That one, Amazon. No, it's not that one. Or is it? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's in capitals. So I use the same style of fonts. They're not identical posters, but again, it's the theme of it that you get. So that's your Indiana Jones font. There's all sorts in here. I do use Space Comics. I've used the Slapstick one. All available, all free of charge. Now, do check the licensing on them, but it's a great place to start. But you are not limited to that. Because when you're doing your comics, you will need to think about the font that goes in the bubbles. Because these fonts are all very well, but they're very much headings. They wouldn't look great if you were trying to write a paragraph of text in it. Now, I've got loads of these links. So what I'll do is I'll put the links in the text in YouTube, and I'll put it in my email newsletter. So if you're subscribed to the VIP list, this will be with you shortly. But over here, you've got the Comica ones. They work fantastic as blocks of text, both of those. Some of these work well, others less so. Just depends on the kind of look. That's definitely a title. It's very heavy. But there's 38 of them in there, and I've used probably about half of those in comics that I've used. You can also get entire collections here, and again, they are the written ones that would work really well in terms of paragraphs, so speech bubbles and stuff like that. All work incredibly, incredibly well. These Comica ones, every time you look up comics and cartoons, they come up. Yep, the dialogue do look more handwritten because it's more like... What you don't want to do when you're doing your own comic is think, I want it to look handwritten, so I'll use Comic Sans. Because everything looks like Comic Sans. And actually, cartoons, if you actually pick up a comic and you look at it, they're not. They are nicely written and they look handwritten, but they're not Comic Sans. You need it to look like that. So yes, you need two distinct categories of fonts. Big, bold, bright ones for huge headlines, and ones that work for paragraphs of text. Now, you may find that you need to make them bold or make them not bold, or maybe try italic, obviously, but really they need to be readable, and they need to be really nicely, easily readable. And that's what these have got. Some of them more easily readable than others. The other thing to think about is the type of comic as well. If it's a space style comic, italic works well. And that was why I showed you the Western ones. Think of the type of document that you're putting together. I found 1001fonts.com also have categories for comic fonts. And they had some different ones. They do have things like Badaboom, but they've also got other types of font. Thing that annoyed me with that is there's so few on a page. I find myself, I've got to navigate a lot. But if you can't find the ones you're looking for at DeFont, then try 1001fonts.com. Now, Font Squirrel is also fabulous, and these are all 100% free as well. You can, again, in here, it's got classification at the top. If you look at it, fonts, list, classification, comic. So you can limit your search. You don't have to just, keep looking from page to page to page. You can limit the search. That Comic Relief one does look a little bit, to me, like Comic Sans, so I won't be using that one. But there are some in here that are incredibly nice, and again, they would work. I mean, that Calam would work really well in a speech bubble type situation. And more Comica fonts. So Comica are your friends with comic fonts. I use theirs all the time. There's actually as well a couple of others. That was one that caught my eye. I thought that looked handwritten, and I thought it would look good in a bubble. And then other stuff, and that one actually showed you that to get the comic look, when you actually zoom into it, sometimes they're very rough around the edges, incredibly rough. But when you look at them in a paragraph of text, they do actually work. Now, Google Fonts is another place that you can look. Google Fonts work slightly differently. Let me know in the chat if you've used Google Fonts. You have to basically add it to a download option and then download them. But if they're Google Fonts, you should be able to use them online if you wanted to put that font online for whatever the reason. I then moved on, again, 1001 fonts, the Comica fonts. So we've discussed the Comica ones. But there are other ones like this as well. That looked like, to me, I looked at that and the little jaggedness of it and the way it was kind of jaunty. It reminded me of Kung Fu Panda. So try and look at it and try and think what it reminds you of as well. And then you can pick from that what style it is. Now, Blambot. Blambot are the font foundry that supply the fonts for Comic Life. Now, when I looked at them, I found the font name in Comic Life and I Googled it and I came up with the font. And they were hugely, hugely expensive. But going the other way, in terms of going to blambot.com and looking at the fonts, as I go down here, there's Badaboom and there's Badaboom Pro. I thought interesting. So I went and had a look at Badaboom Pro, which was the one that shipped with Comic Life, and yes, it's $20. So I went back and I thought, okay, Badaboom. And that one's free. So a lot of these fonts, if you, instead of starting off in Comic Life and working backwards, if you start at Blambot and work forwards, find a font you like, could well be free. So all of these are little samples of what that will look like. So if we look at this back issue one, that might work well. And again, $0. So you can get that free of charge. And there is what it looks like in all the different sizes and all the different... the fact that's got numbers with it. One of the things I meant to say, when you're looking at fonts, be very careful. Some of the free ones look great. So if you look at the top of this, they look fantastic. But not all of them, not all of the free versions have all of the characters. They may be uppercase only, lowercase only, and they may not have any numbers. So check, as that says, characters included in all the fonts in this set, regular are shown. So it shows you what's available within it. And that one's completely free of charge. So although I tend to start at DeFont, if you know that you're looking for something specific for cartoons, you may want to start in here. So let's have a look. How many of these are free? See, that one's $25. You will find something similar to that, probably for free on the other sites. That one's $30. But there are some in here that are free. It would have helped in the fonts if they told you which ones were free. But unfortunately, it doesn't. But you can limit the search to dialogue fonts, and you can then work down through there. So let's have a look at Alter Ego and the other one. $20 for that one. How's this one? $20. They around that mark, but there are some that are free. So it's just a matter of working through them and seeing if you can find it. That font, Blambot Casual, is the one that is in Comic Life. So that's the one that I use most. But you will find something similar. Even they have ones that are free of charge. Now, not wishing to teach my grandmother to suck eggs, I'll need to find a font I haven't got. Do you all know how to download and use and install and configure fonts? Obviously, it's going to be different in different systems. I don't believe I've got Angry Birds, so I will download Angry Birds. I used to use a font manager. I used to use Fusion Suitcase, and after that, I used Font Explorer Pro, I think it was called. But I've given up using that. The benefit of using a font manager, it really does only have sort of one benefit. And that is it can activate and deactivate fonts automatically. That is about it with the font manager. So I don't use a font manager anymore. It just got to be too arduous, to be honest, managing the font manager and the font manager managing the fonts. So that's my download of Angry Birds. I'll double click to open it and I get a TTF file, a true type font. If on a Mac I press the spacebar, I can preview that. Now it looks like that one, as I said to you, may not have numbers. So if it's important that you have numbers, you know, like Mike called the thing Brooklands 196, any fonts that have no numbers are useless to me. But it's an Angry Birds font. So if I wanted it to say Angry Birds, I could do that. So there's my font. Now, on a Mac, it's very simple. I am opening up a Finder window. Now, that's opened up my Google Drive because that's my default. There's my video review process that I said to you. Couldn't do it without Google. But I need to get to the library, and it's not that simple anymore to get to the library unless you know the trick. If you use the Go, library isn't listed. It used to be. It's gone. But if you go to the Go and hold the Option key down, so toggle that on and off, it appears in the middle. So I'm holding the Option key down and I can go into Library. In Library, I have two font areas. I have fonts and I have font collections. Font collections are in the Mac OS font manager. So actually, when I say I don't use a font manager, there's actually one built in. And it's pretty powerful, to be honest. I just don't bother with it. My rationale is I'm not fiddling making collections and stuff because it would only be on this Mac. When I go to another Mac, I'm going to have problems. What I do, and this has happened to me, there is the fonts that I have installed. All of these. So I've got 275 fonts of my own. Now, they're not all different. If you look here, we've got SF Pro, which is that one, in all the different styles and weights, etc. Fedora is the one, the Indiana Jones font. But there's lots of different ones in the same family. I've got the Ransom font, which was the one from the MacBites show you saw, and I've got Razzle, which I use for Razzle Dazzle, the old Razzle Dazzle. That's one of the best MacBite shows ever. That was the one about fish and tips, Graham. You'll recall it, doubtless. So these are all the fonts that I've installed. Now, some of these fonts I used for a presentation. Here's all my comic fonts. When I use them for a presentation, I'm not taking my iMac out to present with me. So what I do is I go to the library, I go to the fonts folder, I zip it up, and I stick it in a cloud service. And when I pick up my laptop to use it, I download that zip, unzip it, take the whole lot, stick it in the fonts folder. Now, I'm not going to need the comic fonts for most of my presentations, but I don't care. I just need fast. So zip the lot, unzip the lot. I can't not have the ones I need. That's my idea of font management. It works for me. What can I say? So I don't have Angry Birds as far as I know. No, I've got Argentina, I've got that one, which is Atlantic script. Australia, and then I've got my bada boom. To install Angry Birds, drag, drop, done. That's it. I do believe Windows is still pretty similar, but you need to put it in the right place. Maybe Mike could find out where the right place is, because I honestly can't remember where the right place is. I drilled down to the C drive, then I went into users, then I went into my profile, and it's somewhere in there. That's as near as I can get, I'm afraid. But if I go into Designer, oh look, there's the file. That's what I do for the show art. We have lots of different versions of it.
Windows fonts.
Windows fonts, that's where you need it. What are all these, I hear you say? This one's a 16:9. This one is for Instagram, it's square. This one's for the website. And this one is for the show notes. You'll notice that's very different because it's basically a magazine style front. These ones that don't have anything, they're printable. 6x4, 6x8, 8x10, 12x10. So if I'm intending to print them out, I will create them in there. But what we are interested in is a new one for the web. 1280 by 720. Go into that and put some text in. So let's put new MacBites episode. And let's make that much bigger. Oh, MacBites has only got one C in it, woman. All right, so I've got it selected. My Angry Birds should be available. And there it is. And there's my Angry Birds. And I'm sure that would look much funkier if it was in red. So let's go and find a nice red. Where's a nice red like that? There we go. New MacBites episode in Angry Birds. So very simple with fonts. I have spent money on fonts, but not often, because there are so many fantastic ones, especially if you're looking for something like a comic genre and maybe it's a one-off. What you don't want to do is spend a ton of time looking for them, though. Now, in terms of what you can do with those fonts, I'm going to quickly show you, and I will show you in Keynote. And we'll make a new Keynote file. That you didn't used to have this option available, but it's new, and now you do. So I'll put some text on there. We will put Angry Birds. Is Angry Birds one word or two? Not sure. Right, so we've got Angry Birds. I will increase the size of that. And we'll change the font. Is Angry Birds. You'll notice on a Mac, I did not need to restart that app for that font to be available. It's read in automatically. Now, again, I probably want a different colour on it, so we'll change the font colour to a bright red. But, and we looked at this a few weeks back, and at the time you might have thought, can you stretch the words like Comic Life in Affinity? Sort of, but not in the same ways. There is no envelope distort yet in Affinity Designer or Publisher. There is in Photo, but it will rasterize it. So not yet in the same way in terms of perspective dragging and stuff. You can scale it, obviously. And if you were in Publisher, you would have two ways of scaling it. But what I can't do in that is an envelope distort. An envelope distort is where there's a grid. Let me have a quick think. And I can show you that. Probably. Let's save that file on the desktop so I know exactly where it is. Don't disappear. We'll put fonts. Now I can flick over, but I'm actually going to open that in Photo. Ooh, there we go. Now, what you can do with it in there, so first thing I'm going to do is duplicate it. So I've got two copies of it. One that is unedited. But in there, I can make sure I've got hold of it. But down here, I have the perspective tool. And the perspective tool would let me do that. So I can alter that as if it's a comic heading or whatever I would like to do with it. But at that point, it's rasterized it. So if I click it, I can get back to it, but I'm not editing the text. It's unfortunately rasterized. That's the only way at the moment. They're working on it, is what I'm hearing. So we will just have to wait for that. Right. Where's that disappeared to? That one. There we go. Right. This was something that we looked at a couple of weeks ago. At the time, you may have thought, never going to use that. No idea what to do with it. Doesn't matter. But we've got some options in here. And we have in here an outline where you can choose a colour. So let's say with that we want a nice yellow. In fact, let's make it black so you can actually see it. There we go. You can also put a shadow on it. And if you look at that, that looks comic-y. With a comic, you would probably have it lower down. So about 315. And the thing with that is, you've got your border on it. So I've only made it 1 pixel, but you could make it much more. If I do that, it might make sense to have it in a different colour. There we go. So you can do that with it. That looks terrible. That looks better. And the shadow, you can have the offset a little bit more on that, which might make more sense now it's bigger. But that, all of that is still editable. So nothing to stop you going in there. And remember, this is just Keynote. Obviously, Affinity Designer, InDesign Publisher can all do things like this, but this is actually only Keynote and it's a new feature. So I can go in there and carry on editing, do my heart's content with the comic-y styles in terms of an outline and a drop shadow that's quite harsh on that, just in Keynote. So, fonts. Make sure you've got access to all of the fonts you need. Very seldom will you need to pay for fonts, unless it's something very, 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 very specific. I don't think you would need to. So, let's head back. Let's head back. Where have you disappeared to now? I've come out of you, haven't I? You don't like it. Right. Very swift unboxing. It's nearly bedtime. My unboxing is very poor. It's one item. But just wait till you see the state of it. This is how he delivered it. Idiot. Right, let me get my camera. This is probably where things will start getting uppity. And YouTube will get uppity as well. So let's go in there. You'll open up on the wrong screen, won't you? Because you do every single time. I knew it. You've opened up on the wrong screen. And what's that doing there? Right, let me resize this and get it onto the proper screen, and then you will have the pleasure of seeing what the postman did. Now, the rip on the top, that's not the postman, that's me. That was me getting the label off and shredding it. No. Good job it wasn't fragile, isn't it? Because that's how he put it through the door, bent like that. The postman's a maniac. I think he bent it over like that to try and get it through the door. No need for that. Like I say, door was open. All he needed to do was just post it. Crying out loud. But there we go. Something that's needed for my Shuttle Pro toy. Which is that. That looks like an Amazon. No frustration packing, doesn't it? It is an extension. This one's a USB 3. Now, the one that I had was a USB 2, but the device is only a USB 2. But what I need to do, this is my Shuttle Pro. There it is. So it's literally next to me on the table. About 2010, I emailed them and said, this Shuttle Pro, it's lovely. Can we have a Bluetooth one? Because there's a cable sticking out of the top. And they said, yes, we're working on it. Guess what? This is still the latest model. Never been a Bluetooth version. And like I say, I'd also like those things to light up automatically, and they don't do that either. But there's a cable in it, and I need that cable to stretch round the side of the desk, round to the back, underneath, and into a box. So I need one of these. So I've actually used a USB 2 one that I've got, but I've had to replace it. So I figured I might as well get a USB 3. So that's what this is. It's just a cheapy Amazon Basics one. We had a real laugh with the price, didn't we, Mike? You've forgotten the full horror of that, haven't you? The 3 metres and the 2 metres?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. This one's 3 metres. So I just thought, well, I'll have a look how much the 2 metres is. Working on the principle, this was £6.49. And I thought, well, it's not going to be that much cheaper. It's not going to be half the price. I was expecting about £5, £5.50, something like that. No, the 2 metre one, remember this, £6.49, £26.90. So I went with the 3 metre one. And that is said toy. So I won't be using it actually for that. I've used my spare one. But what I do like about the Amazon Basic one is this thing, which is where you plug the end that would normally go into the computer in. That one is nice. And this bit here, the metal on the inside, it's sheathed. The other one, no, it's not sheathed. So it doesn't look as pretty as this one does. So I thought for £6.50, but this will get put in the drawer and this will be used because most of my peripherals are now USB 3. So when I'm looking for my cable that was USB 2 and would have worked, but it would have made it run slower, I'll be able to have a faster one. So that's all I've unboxed this week. That's pretty poor, that, isn't it? But bearing in mind what I spent last week, probably about right. So that's all I've got today, a 3 metre cable to pop in a drawer. And we did have a bit of a laugh with the drawers, didn't we, Mike? When I said, well, the HDMI cables should be next door in the studio. And you're like, why? Don't know, just historic. They're in the bottom drawer in the studio. And the USB cables, they're in the bottom drawer in the office on the left-hand side. And the other cables, they're in it somewhere else. It's just the way I work. What I really need to do, and who knows, maybe it will happen this week, I really need to consolidate everything in the office. That would work well. But will it happen? Well, you never know. We, however, will be back. Same time, same place next week. We are on holiday, aren't we, Mike?
We are.
So we've got no excuse for next week not to be absolutely fabulous. So we will aim for next week to be absolutely fabulous. In fact, I'm thinking of tempting Mike to cook something. I think we should have something extra special on Friday night that Mike has cooked that we can share with you. Like the flapjack, Mike. I'm challenging you. Look at his face. Look at his face. You'll find something. You'll be able to thrill us all. You know you will. You want first dibs on everything we do? Go to that page, sign up. And if you want to contact us on any of those. If you're wondering, you know these people who have never heard of MacBites? Lucky souls. You might be wondering who MacBites Siri is. You need to listen to a MacBites to know who MacBites Siri is. Graham, do you want to explain who MacBites Siri is?
He's a phone.
He is, and there's his good Lady Siri as well. And they're really the stars of the show, aren't they, Graham? Well, that's what Siri keeps telling me. So do we have questions? Do we have suggestions? While that's on there, I will tell you what we have. What's come to the top of the pile of things to cover. Peter's gone, but Peter will be watching in hindsight. So hello, future Peter. Peter has a challenge with Scrivener. He also suggested a couple of weeks back he'd like to see an edit of a podcast from soup to nuts. Obviously, not a MacBites. So, like I said earlier, I do a shorter show called The Walker's Warblings, which I can do. So I will do that as well. The show's about 11 minutes, but it's one of those shows where, unlike MacBites, where you have to do it virtually in real time because you're slotting in sound effects and stuff, this one has music at the beginning, music at the end. It has an introduction by me, an outro by me, the main part by somebody else, and then the credits at the end, and that's it. So I could definitely do that in probably about half an hour. What do you mean Siri's moonlighting? I can't have that. That's terrible. Siri, we're going to have words. I think if you haven't listened to a MacBites, Graham, which one would you say to listen to if you've never heard of MacBites? Don't listen to the first 20.
Episode 1.
No, episode 1 was dire. Episode 1 was shocking. We were 3 back then, weren't we? Now we're 4, but 2 of us are phones. If you've ever heard, you'll understand. One of my favourite episodes was the old Razzle Dazzle. Another one was Untethered in Timperley, even though it was a nightmare to record because I nearly went 1,000,000 times. Which was the one with Mum?
Russell does.
No. In 2015. It was early 2015. I can't. Oh, was it Kidnapping Craig's cat? No, it can't be. Has anybody tried Go64 to see what programs are 64-bit? I haven't, but I am being driven insane with Mojave telling me what apps are not 64-bit. So I installed the driver for my Shuttle Pro, and it gave me about 9 messages, one after the other, saying that I needed to contact the developer because it wouldn't be compatible with future operating systems, which is fine. You only need to tell me once, Apple. But what Apple have done, which is even worse than that, is it's repeatedly telling me about certain applications that aren't 64-bit. And why that's a problem is if I'm sitting here and I open app number 1 and it's not 64-bit, and Apple give me a bit of a message, I can just say, that's fine. Click OK, we're done. Where it's causing havoc is where an application is working on a timer. So I have an application called the iTV, and it records TV programs. And obviously, it's not running all the time. It cranks itself up on a schedule that you've set. And what happens is, if I've set it to record something at 2 o'clock in the morning, because I pretty much only record stuff off BBC 4, rest of it's garbage, it will pop up a message that says, hello, do you remember? I'm not 64-bit compatible. But it won't start the recording. So I'm at the stage with that application, I can't close it. Because if I close it and let it rely on the schedule, it'll fail. So I don't think that's very clever of Apple, but that's a good tip. I should go and have a look. There is also, let's come out of this for a second and go into Firefox. There's also another one that might be useful to you, which is called roaringapps.com. Roaring Apps is a database. It's been going since Lion, I think.
Hence the name.
Yes. And it now does a lot more, actually. It allows you to search for apps and see if they're compatible. So let's say I'm looking for Camtasia from TechSmith. That's the one. And what it's saying is, well, actually, it's got no compatibility data for that one. Not a good one. What shall I try? Word? Microsoft Word? Something's going to be data on. Or Scrivener or something like that. Let's have a look. No, it's got no data for that either. This is shocking. Hang on, this used to be brilliant. What have they done with it? Maybe I can just view the Mac apps and be done. This is what you used to do. That's better. So it's got a list of applications, 10 per page, alphabetical. So let's make that 100 per page, make it worthwhile. Right, let's find something that I use. Audacity. Is Audacity on there? Oh, good grief. No, there's about 19 different Adobe things. Oh, and you've gone back to 10, have you? Oh, no, there's more. Audition. God, there's a lot of apps, isn't there? Hang on. Audition. Oh. Audio test. Oh, come on. Maybe it's somewhere else. But let's say AutoCAD. AutoCAD 2011. Does it work? And you've got these going backwards to Yosemite. So I thought it was Lion, but maybe they've dumped that now. So it goes back to Yosemite. And there's a green dot if it works, blue dot if it doesn't, and a red dot if you do not install it. Does not work. Oh, no data is blue. So here's your key at the top. So yeah, actually, Photoshop's a laugh, isn't it? Because that's a nightmare trying to get anything working. Let's move back to that one. Let's look at some of the Adobe stuff. Shall I look up Flash? Maybe not. I'm surprised there's so little data on some of this. But like these ones here. So Photoshop CS5 does not work on Mojave. Works on High Sierra with issues, but is fine up to Sierra. So if you're trying to cling on maybe to your CS6, it won't work on Catalina, but it's fine on Mojave. So if you've got CS6, you're at the point, you're going to have to wait to see if it's compatible with Catalina. But at the moment, it'll go up to Mojave. So that's pretty useful, actually. We've been using it all the way back since then. You can't think of a specific program. Oh, Graham. Interested to look into Coda and compare it to Notion. Okay, I will have a look at that. We went Notion because we were at a point with ZenKit that ZenKit was working and we were happy with it and we were about to pay for it. And I think I've mentioned, I put in a support ticket asking about a particular scenario and what the payment would be. Is it 1 for this and 2 for that? Didn't get a reply. And I'm trying to give them money, which is ridiculous. But Notion I tried and then went away from it and then came back to it. And what we ended up doing, we didn't retype everything. We just transferred it all. So that some of that data that you saw in Notion has been through Trello. We took it to Asana. Then we took it back to Trello. Then we took it back to Asana. It's a long story. Then we took it from Asana to ZenKit. And then we took it from ZenKit to Notion. But in Notion, the Notion one took much more of a rebuild because it can do a lot more. Now, I showed you the 2-table setup. What I'll show you in the future is the 4-table setup and how everything links together. But I'll probably do that with a system that I haven't actually built yet. I'm in the middle of building it, which is it's basically a grand to-do system. So it'll have projects, clients, tasks, a daily journal, a weekly setup and a monthly thing going on. And I haven't quite decided how to build it, but when I do, I'll make sure copious notes are made. Memory web, cloud storage for all devices. Oh, that's a good idea. Great tip. I will try that, Mike. Make a note of that.
Already have done.
Oh, well done. Looking under software applications, we'll have a 64-bit compatible column. Ooh. I think there's a good amount of my stuff that isn't. I won't be going to Catalina anytime soon. I did the Mojave update only about 3 months ago, 2.5, 3 months ago. Graham knows why. Both Graham and I had huge problems with High Sierra updates, trashing the machine. Trashing in terms of wouldn't reboot. Not dead, just wouldn't reboot without a lot of TLC. When you basically got back into it, it got in a loop. I want to do this update. And when you did the update, you came to reboot, it wouldn't reboot. It said it was in an unstable state and it couldn't reboot. So in the end, I thought there's only one way out of this, and that's to get it to a point where it's got half the update installed. But if I reboot, it won't reboot. But if in that state of it's half installed, I then install Mojave on the top of it, it might just work. And that was what I did. Obviously, the same thing could happen with Catalina, in which case I'd just have to stay on Mojave until I'm sure that the apps that I use are going to be compatible. But I think there's going to be some that aren't. So I'm going to have to do something about that. And what, I'm not quite sure. I don't mind moving apps if they're not compatible. I guess it's going to depend on what the apps are. So I'll need to check. Is your Canon scanner a flatbed, Graham, or is it sheet fed? How old's the scanner? Neil, that's exactly where I am. I'll basically update like when I'm forced to. We did do the LCAP update to Sierra, didn't we? Because we hated LCAP. So we moved to Sierra fairly quickly. But I didn't move to High Sierra for at least 10 months. And then High Sierra to Mojave was enforced. One of my updates, it just did the update. And I came in and it said, hello, welcome to Mojave. And I thought that was kind of you. But I didn't ask it to. It just did. I haven't done the update on a... Well, no, that's not strictly true. I've done the update on update day on a backup Mac every time since Leopard. But on a production Mac, the last time I did the update was Snow Leopard, and Snow Leopard was perfect. Snow Leopard was the epitome of all good things iOS, OS 10 related. And it was all downhill since then. Yosemite... What was the one before Yosemite, Mike? Oh, it was Mavericks, wasn't it? Yeah. Mavericks. Yeah, not overly keen. Yosemite was possibly a little bit better than Mavericks, but I just hated LCAP. So I think I pretty much skipped that. I did install it, but only on the way to go into Sierra. So no, I don't upgrade my Mac. Now, do I upgrade iOS immediately? I certainly upgrade iOS faster than I do my Mac, but it won't be on release day because it's just too dangerous in terms of being bricked. A printer combo. Have you tried... what's that called? No, not like that. No, not scan. ViewScan. ViewScan's fantastic. ViewScan actually works with my sheet-fed ScanSnap. There's a couple of quirks with it, but ViewScan has something like support for 25,000 scanners. When the driver for my scanner, which was an Epson, when I moved from Windows, it didn't even need a driver to work on the Mac. But if you want extra features, I just install ViewScan and be done with it. ViewScan is fabulous. But if it's only 5 years old, surely they should bring a driver out. 5 years isn't that old. Because you've got more to worry about than the scanner. You've got the printing side to be concerned about. I don't buy devices like that. It's asking for trouble if you're me. My printer's gone. And I said to Mike, we're going to have to think about replacing it. Because, like the one day a year I need to print. Doubtless it'll happen when Mike's off work. And when Mike's at work, he has a printer. So he came home clutching a one-page black and white print for me that was desperate because I needed it for my Shuttle Pro. I needed it for the little buttons at the top. And, it would have been so simple to print out and he just won't do it. So I keep my stuff separate. My scanner's quite old. I'm going to have to face facts with my scanner. It's probably going to need replacing. But it was quite expensive and I don't see the need if it's working. And it is working. The problem I've got is it's only working up to LCAP, I think. LCAP on, it could be even Yosemite, on an old machine. Let me show you. Remote desktop, which one are you? You're Marconi. Let's have a look. Where's that disappeared to? It's on the other screen. Right, let's have a look. You see, this is what annoys me. This is what annoys me. Right, I'm bringing on the screen of my shared Mac. This is the one that does the scanning. So you'll notice it's got DevonThink open. If we go into it, about this Mac, it's as old as the hills. It's actually my father's. So yes, Yosemite, 10.10. As far as I know, I think that's as far as it can go. He left it to me in his will. It must have been new about 2009, was it? Yeah, mid-2009. It can't be updated past that. So it's not bad. I've updated the hard drive. I've replaced it for an SSD. And for the job it does, it's fine. But it isn't going to run the new DevonThink. And it's the DevonThink that's scanning. You'll notice this stupid message at the top. Why don't you upgrade to Mojave? Why aren't you bright enough, Apple, to know that this machine can't run Mojave? Just an idea. So the number of times I say not now, but it will keep coming back. But that's the one that I use for that, and that's what I do with it. Luckily, I have managed to get this database in DevonThink Pro Office 2 to synchronise with DevonThink Pro Office 3 on my other system. So far, so good with that. I can still scan and grab. What we're looking at there is the receipt for the freebies this week. So I've scanned it in there. And that's how I'm doing it at the minute. How long I'll be able to keep doing that, I don't know. But that's what I'm doing right now. Right, okay, what have we got there? Gonna need to work on Wi-Fi. It's in another room. That's an issue we've got as well. The printer that we've got at the moment is network enabled, but only with a cable. So it sits next to a Mac and another router and all kinds of stuff, so I can actually plug it in. But the ones we're now looking at do have AirPrint and are Wi-Fi enabled. But printers, scanners, they're a nightmare. Anything with moving parts, it's a nightmare. So I'm looking at a Brother. I'm only looking at another Brother printer because they're actually based quite close to us, about 10 miles away, so I can get really snotty with them if it doesn't work. And the other reason is I've got toner. So given the fact the toner's more expensive than the printer, I might as well buy another one of the printers and use the toner up on it. That's the current plan anyway. We'll see what happens with that. That's another job for the massive air quotes holiday. The holiday that we have, which is basically just more tech. Yeah, that's the problem. That really annoys me with kit. You buy a piece of hardware and then they refuse to update the drivers. That's the problem with my scanner. There's nothing wrong with the scanner, and the scanner itself was probably about £325. It's sheet fed, so you can stick 50 pages in and it just scans the lot. When you say who needs a flatbed scanner, I agree with you. If it's 1 or 2 pages, or even like that newsletter I should have got in a Microsoft Publisher format, but even if I had, that would have done me no good with an iPad in a car. So I actually had a printed copy from the week before, so I dragged it out of my bag and I did it with my iPad. And if I'd have had the pro features of PDF Expert, what on earth has gone on there? If I'd have had the pro features, I could have compressed it and uploaded it and it would have been fine. But I still need a sheet-fed scanner just for quantity. I don't need a flatbed, but I need the sheet-fed. And there's nothing wrong with the scanner, and it's so annoying. That's why I've got that whole setup where that machine just sits there. That's all it does. That is all it does. What you might... no, see, yours is an audio interface, so same problems. The audio interface I went for, so maybe moving forward you could think about this, Charles. The audio interface that I'm using, that you're listening to right now, is actually a Zoom H6 recorder. It doesn't need any drivers, so there's nothing to keep up to date. So I plug in 2 XLR microphones. In fact, I can probably show you that. Where's multicam? Where's the mouse gone? Right, let's get that up. So let's zoom round here. There we are. There it is. So I've got my 2 microphones plugged into it. The cable on the right hand side with the red bit on it is going to the computer, and there's no drivers required. I also have a remote control for that, so if I want to alter the sound on it without touching it, which could upset microphones, etc., and that came with it. And the top bit that you're looking at with a little round circly thing on it, it came with, I did an unboxing of that, and it came with 2 more that you could actually change. That was fabulous. Now I'm getting emails. I need to shut that up. I'll shut that up. But that's what I use, and it doesn't need drivers. Which I didn't actually think at the time would be a big issue or not. But thinking about it now, it is actually a big issue. Because when they stop supporting the drivers, you've got the same problem again. Not brilliant. Oh, I know what I just didn't do. What I didn't do was that. In fact, why is that doing that? That shouldn't be doing that, full stop. But never mind if it's going to play ball. Right, okay, so where are we at? That's true if you need documents, but then they are that good with an iPad these days. Maybe you could. It depends on the document, I guess, doesn't it? Sometimes if the documents are incredibly fragile, you'd be better off with an iPad or a phone. But just going to depend on the documents. But I hate replacing perfectly working hardware. I mean, what else would I do with it? You know, you could try selling it, but, you know, people have probably got newer kit than I've got, because muggles who don't really know, you know, they're just going and buy a computer. It's not going to be an old computer, is it? So it probably wouldn't work for them. So it just sits there and is very, very annoying. At least you've got it working. But I've got lots of kit like that. I mean, when I pulled all those cables out, I did a video the other week of installing something next door, didn't I? And I pulled out a load of cables. Oh, I put a USB hub in it. Pulled out a load of cables, and one of the cables that came out was a Firewire 800 cable. I'm laughing like a drain, thinking, one, what was it in there for? What was I using that for in the studio? Which is not where I work all the time, it's where I go to record. And two, what decade was that working in? Because I don't even remember what device it was. Is that long ago? But they've pensioned that one off. And every time they bring new kit out, they've got new interface on it. And that just annoys me. We've got drawerfuls of stuff, adapters, that you don't get rid of. Because all of a sudden you'll find that, the laptop from 2006, where's that adapter? I've no idea. So we try and get replacement adapters that have got like 3 ports on it instead of the one from Apple that's got 1. And that's worked pretty well up to now. But no, if your hardware needs a driver, you are without a paddle. Well, as I say, I've got that scanner working with ViewScan, but it's not great multi-page. It's fine doing page by page, but multi-page, it does get itself a little bit excited. So at some point, I'm going to have to replace it, but not yet. As long as that laptop keeps going, I'm going to keep with it. I'm actually thinking of putting a bigger hard drive in that laptop. The hard drive's been changed twice. It was changed from a smallish one, probably 128, to something like 500. And then I went from 500 to 256 because I changed it to an SSD to get a bit of speed out of it. I'm wondering if it could take a terabyte SSD. Watch this space, I'll let you know. But at the moment, it's humming away quite nicely and I'm leaving it be. But when it breaks, I haven't got a machine that's got an OS old enough for the scanner. And if you think about it, how would you install one that old? You just try and install, or well, actually try and get the installer for El Capitan. It can be done, but it is a dark art. You're relying on links that kind of bypass the store to get directly to the file. You've no real idea what you're downloading. And although I made boot disks back in the day, if you remember, about 2 years ago, there was a debacle and Apple's certificates all expired. So they had to regenerate them so your old installers will not work. So they've really backed you into a corner. It's not as much fun playing with tech these days as it used to be, because you used to be able to be quite clever with it and do what you needed to do to make the kit you've got work. And now they've made that so difficult, it's just not worth the fight at times. I'm not surprised you're afraid to throw away cables. Me too, particularly when I'm not sure what they're off, which is worse. You're like, well, if you don't know what it's for, you don't need it. But the thing is, at the point I not necessarily know what that cable's for, but at the point I'm looking for a cable, I'll try that one and it might just be the right one. So I'm with you. Just keep them. I know. The Internet of Things just terrifies me. Your fridge doesn't get any more security updates. I can see the day. Or it all gets taken over and your fridge spews up on the floor like ours does. We had fridges for years that were fine. They had little ice boxes in them. But in the UK, we use condenser. Is it condenser they're called, Mike? Basically, like, they self-defrost is the plan. So there's no ice box in it. There's no little ice box at the top like there used to be years ago. It's got a hole at the back, at the bottom. And the idea is that the condensation drips down this hole to a plate. And then the plate heats up from the fridge and it just evaporates. That's the plan. You try that in the middle of a heat wave in the UK in August. You go down to the kitchen and it is swimming. And it's because the fridge is working overtime, the liquid is dripping down the hole. The plinth at the bottom, the first one, got rusty. Oh yes, this tray's metal. And the second one, it just overflows. There's more condensation than the plate can handle, so the floor's full of it. Yes, fridges used to be made better years ago than they are now. Anyway, what are we going to have to eat tonight? Because we're about to head off and have it. What have we got, Mike?
Fruit.
Are we having fresh fruit again?
Yes.
That's because there was a certain overindulgence in birthday cake this week, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. So we're back on the wagon. I will admit this, I possibly overdid the nuts earlier in the week. Ended up with stomachache for 2 days. Do like the nuts? Nuts don't like me quite so much. So, who's having what? We've already had the MacBites flapjack made. I'm going to challenge Mike with finding another recipe for something this week, and he can actually show it to you. He can try it live. I'm thinking it should be something incredibly sickly. Don't you think, Mike?
Yeah.
Are you concerned that you can find something sickly enough? How about gingerbread men or something like that? Graham's got a Belgian bun. Awesome. But he's also having the fruit salad. Do you know what I haven't had yet and I really quite fancy? Have you got a Morrison's near you, Graham? A Morrison's supermarket. I don't think there's too many of them down south. There's more up here than down there. We don't have that many Waitrose. They're pretty rare, Waitrose. But we do have plenty of Morrison's. Oh no, it's Asda I'm thinking of. You must have an Asda. At the moment, because I know Graham eats these, Magnum ice creams on at half price, Graham. They have my absolute favourite of salted caramel. I do like the white ones, but I must admit, salted caramel, much nice. In fact, what was that one we had? Was it a double raspberry?
Yeah. And
I don't normally eat that kind of stuff, but I said to Mike, I'll try a double raspberry. They too are on offer, 3 for £2, but the others are 4 for £1.60. But I had the raspberry. It was very nice. So if you've got an Asda handy, pop in before the offer goes off. The offer was on at Tesco, but now it's on at Asda. Stick to Asda. Half price at Asda. And when Mike went in and raided the place, why don't you tell them what the lady said? Near the microphone, dear.
What's she saying?
Well, if it had been me, it would have been a pea-fit. He's completely forgotten what the lady said.
Oh, you're taking advantage whilst they're on offer.
Yes, you're stocking up while they're on offer. Oh yes, the freezer's full of them. Did I mention we've got 2 freezers? One of them's full of ice cream. Excellent, Graham. Then you need to get there while they're still on offer. Don't let that offer go off. You get 4 Magnums for £1.60. Can't say fairer than that. Excellent. He's already got a freezer full. I'm loving that. So, down south, Graham has stockpiled them, and up north, we've cornered the market. There probably isn't a Magnum to be had anywhere in Asda. Loving that. Right, okay, well, everybody have a fantastic week. We are on holiday, but that's laughable here at MacBites headquarters. It just means there's more chance of a MacBites. That'd frighten you, wouldn't it, Graham? 2 within living memory. I think it could happen. You never know. But for now, it is good night from me.
And it's good night from me.
And we will both see you next time. Night, folks.